Chapter 988. This kind of thankless work, if it was in the past, Aper would never do it. He was a politician, and he valued the overall situation more. He valued how much he could get in return for his efforts. There was no point in doing things like this where he could not get anything even if he put in a lot of effort. It's just that they didn't get any benefits from the Battle of the First City. On the contrary, the original 50,000 siege infantry were almost wiped out. Since they couldn't take down the city, they needed an explanation. Then let's destroy it. Alit made this difficult decision and arranged for people to do it. But before he gave the order, a new information was sent to him. This made Aper, who didn't change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, turn pale with fright. He finally didn't dare to think about other things and decided to leave immediately. Once again, he came to Yeshin's main tent. Aper anxiously said, "Leader, this prime minister just received news that the main cavalry of the 5-star army has entered our Ili kingdom. Now they are burning, killing, and looting. They have threatened the safety of the king. So I received an order to rush back." The sudden change also caught Yeshen off guard. At first, he thought that Apu was afraid and wanted to leave first so that he could bring up the rear. But soon after, the informants he had left in the Ili kingdom also sent him the same message, so he knew that this matter was not fake. Aper knew that Yeshen was just going through a procedure. He didn't care whether the other party agreed or not. This time, he must leave. Therefore, after meeting with Yisien, he turned around and left to make arrangements for the army's retreat. As for other things, of course, he didn't have the heart to care about them. In order to hurry back, he even threw away some shield carts and ladders. For Aper, less than 5,000 of the 50,000 infantry were basically wiped out, so there was no need to take these things away. When Aper came, he had 200,000 soldiers, but when he left, he only took 125,000 soldiers, 100,000 cavalry, 5,000 infantry, and 20,000 cavalry. In addition to the 45,000 infantry that were destroyed in the siege of the first city, he and Keegan lost nearly 30,000 cavalry. In this battle, not only did he not get any benefits, but he also lost so many soldiers. It could be called a failure. Aper left very quickly. He was so worried about the safety of the king and his base that it only took him a day and a half to order a retreat. His departure made Yeshen's Wara Wara army a lone army. Although it was said to be a lone army, they still had about 135,000 cavalrymen under their command. Of the 30,000 cavalrymen who attacked Mabe, 25,000 were killed. Tung Shu's 10,000 cavalrymen, who returned from Sambuchuan, were completely annihilated. First, he relied on the fact that his subordinates were all cavalrymen and that his base in the Hetao region had not been attacked by the Northern Ming army. So he was more relaxed than Ali Pu. He even didn't forget to bombard first. Since he was going to leave, he had to leave something behind. Otherwise, it would be a big loss. Under Yeshen's order, the 5,000 cavalry dismounted and became infantry. They pushed the heavy catapults and rushed out of the first city. He wanted to do this under the eyes of First City. He wanted to disgust Yang Qindong. The movements outside the city were updated every hour and sent to Yang Qindong. When he heard that Aper had led the Ili army to retreat and Yeshen stubbornly wanted to take his grain fields, he had the urge to immediately send troops. Speaking of which, after a month and 8 days of defensive battles, batch after batch of veterans were recruited into the new Second Army. The new Second Army had basically taken shape under the preparations of the commander. It had the 1st Cavalry Division, the 2nd Cavalry Division, the 3rd Cavalry Division, and the Infantry Division, a total of more than 33,000 people. In addition, there were nearly 20,000 people in the new Second Army's main force, as well as the 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar Division outside the North City. Now, he had more than 60,000 soldiers in his hands. If he launched a counterattack with all his strength, he had some confidence in winning. However, it could only be said that he had confidence, and the chances of winning were not very high. Furthermore, the cavalry that he had brought with him were all elite troops that had fought alongside him for many years. The remaining 135,000 men were already twice the number of his own men. If he were to attack recklessly before they were fully prepared, it was very likely that both sides would suffer losses. Either they didn't fight, or they had to fight and win. This was Yang Qindong's thinking. As for the more than 300,000 mu of grain fields outside the North City that needed time to prepare, it was necessary. Compared to these material things, Yang Qindong valued the lives of the soldiers more. Come, immediately send a message to Division Commander Xian Honghai in North Desert City. Ask him to bring all the cavalry that he can to the first city to provide assistance. This time, I want to inflict a heavy blow on the Walla army and let them know how stupid it is to choose our 5-star army as an opponent. Yang Qindong's eyes flashed with a strong fighting spirit. He wanted to establish the myth that the first city was invincible through this battle. He wanted to completely solve the security problem of the first city through this battle and also dispel other people's thoughts of attacking the city. After the telegram was sent out, Division Commander Xian Honghai in North Desert City, while mobilizing the cavalry in his hands, informed the leaders of the big tribes near North Desert City that it was time to fight a smooth battle. Those who wanted to take advantage of the situation could join in. In the last battle, when they were dealing with Tua Buhua, they successfully created an elite 1st Cavalry Division among the elites. At the same time, the small tribes of North Desert City that were weaker were dealt a devastating blow. Now, there were not many independent tribes left near North Desert City. Usually, everyone lived in harmony. Division Commander Xian Honghai was very self-respecting. Whenever something happened, he would discuss it with everyone, so he also had a good relationship with people here. This time, he took the initiative to stand up and said that if there was any merit, he could share it with everyone. If there were benefits, everyone could take it together. How could anyone not respond? At that moment, under the leadership of Xian Honghai, more than 6,000 men and horses were gathered. Including the Mabe division, there was a total of 20,000 cavalrymen. After receiving the news, they marched straight to the direction of Shur City the next afternoon. At this moment, Yeshen did not know about this. He just arranged for people to keep an eye on the outside of Tulu City. He was only worried about the 200,000 reinforcements of the Ming army. As long as these people did not come out, he could still dominate the first city and do whatever he wanted. What Yeshen wanted to do now was to bombard hundreds of thousands of mu of grain fields. Even though he didn't have a lot of gunpowder in his hands and the range of his explosion was limited, he still stubbornly did it. In his view, this was him waving a knife to cut his own inner demon. Since he was defeated in the Battle of Ming 6 years ago, Yang Qindong had become a demon in Yeshen's heart that could not be removed. Now that he finally had a chance to wipe away the shame, how could he let it go? Moreover, he had surrounded the first city for more than a month, which proved that the Duke of Loyalty was not omnipotent and could not be defeated. As long as he found the right way, he could also make the other party become honest. In this battle, Yeshen even thought that if the first city was not too sturdy, he would have been able to defeat Yang Qindong this time. With this thought, Yeshen did not leave immediately. Instead, he waited to bombard the grain fields and let Yang Qindong know what it meant to be helpless before leaving. He thought that he was showing off, but he did not know that he was standing on the edge of a cliff. The first city and Mabe City were thousands of miles apart. Xian Honghai led 20,000 cavalrymen and traveled day and night. In less than 3 days, they arrived at Wanda City, which was north of the first city. There, they met up with the world's best cavalry division and the Tatar division. They were only given a night's rest. Early the next morning, nearly 40,000 cavalrymen led the division and headed straight for the Walla encampment in the direction of the first city. At this moment, Yesen was still busy bombarding the fertile fields. All the trebuchets were set up yesterday and officially started this morning. At this moment, Yesen's eyes flashed with a crazy light. He wanted to use this action to tell the world that he was not afraid of Yang Chendong and was even stronger than Yang Chendong. At the same time, which was the morning of this day, the 6 100mm mortars of the logistics division in the first city were being tested in the central square of the city, which attracted the attention and curiosity of countless people. This was the first time that many people had seen this pure iron weapon in front of them. To them, the northern Ming army's red barbarian cannons were already very advanced, not to mention the cannons that were many times more advanced than the red barbarian cannons, which could hit targets more than 10 li away. The 100mm mortars of the 6 Gates Regiment were placed in the square, surrounded by soldiers from the logistics division who were responsible for maintaining law and order. There were many people standing in the distance. They wanted to see how this thing spat out fire and how it killed the enemy. As one of Yang Chendong's servants, Yang Si had learned from Yang Chendong professionally and systematically. It could be said that he was an artillery expert. This time, the matter of firing the cannons was naturally handed over to him. After finalizing the ruler, the scouts had already accurately marked the coordinates of the Walla cavalry's encampment. This time, they aimed at the enemy's main camp. Once the cannons were fired, it would mark the beginning of the all-out counterattack. At 9 o'clock in the morning, at this moment, the sky was covered with dark clouds again, indicating that a heavy rain was coming. Yang Chendong sat in the corridor of a courtyard in the Yang residence. He looked up at the sky and sighed softly. This is a heavy rain. Perhaps this heavy rain can wash away the coldness and cruelty of war. Chapter 9, 89. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky, giving people a very oppressive and gloomy feeling. At this moment, the 6 cannons had been calibrated. In order to deal the greatest damage to the enemy and destroy the enemy cavalry's will to resist, Yang Si chose to fire 3 shots in a row from the nearest 6 li to the nearest 12 li. In other words, in this 6-kilometer-long Walla army camp, the 6 cannons had to fire 3 shots in a row in a short period of time. That was 18 shots in a row. Without any preparation, one could imagine how much damage and shock this cannon fire would bring to people. Ready, fire! Seeing that the time was up and everything was ready, Yang Si suddenly dropped the red flag in his hand. Then, the 6 cannons let out a loud roar. 6 shots were fired out of the barrels and flew out of the city. In the square, the people didn't disperse because of the heavy rain. They still opened their eyes wide and looked at the light and roar caused by the cannons. Outside the beginning city, the Walla cavalry was less than 3 kilometers away from the city wall. They seemed to want to use this method to suppress the 5-star army and show their strength. At this moment, the front line had undoubtedly become the focal point of the cannons. First, there was a whistling sound, followed by a boom. After a loud explosion, a deep crater appeared. The 2 tents in the crater were instantly turned into ashes. The other tents on the side were also affected. There were different degrees of damage and casualties. The attack officially began. The cannons drew a beautiful arc in the sky and landed in the Walla camp. In the roar, one tent after another was destroyed. Group after group of unprepared Walla cavalry were killed, injured, and frightened. Yesen saw that the rain was coming. He was patrolling the camp with his men. He wanted to see if there were any tents that were not set up properly, and if there were any stable doors that were not closed properly. It was precisely this action that saved his life. In the blink of an eye, the main tent he was in was blasted to the ground. Soon after, a giant crater appeared. Under the precise measurement of a ruler, the dozen or so personal guards and his concubine in the tent all disappeared from this world. Yesen looked back. His eyes were wide open, and his face was full of disbelief. At this moment, the scene that had been hidden in his heart appeared again. The siege that had lasted for more than a month had made him forget how powerful the firearms in his opponent's hands were. At this moment, all the memories flooded into his mind, and at this moment, fear appeared in his eyes. Boom, boom, boom. The cannons fired one after another. In a short 2 minutes, 18 cannons were fired. If the cannons only caused damage to the Walla cavalry, it would only cause hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries. For a cavalry team of nearly 140,000 people, this damage was nothing. The effect of injuring people was limited. The main purpose was to destroy their morale. Under the 18 cannonballs, the Walla cavalry became dizzy and disoriented, striking fear into their hearts. The originally high morale in their hearts was completely destroyed. At this moment, the loud bugle call sounded. Then, more than 70,000 five-star army began their crazy counterattack. They seemed to have appeared out of thin air and suddenly appeared in all directions of the Walla army camp. Unknowingly, the 4 outer city gates of the beginning city were opened. Too many cavalry warriors poured out from there. In the entire army in the beginning city, except for the infantry division of the new Second Army that continued to stay on the city walls, the other cavalry teams had all come out. They were like locusts that wreaked havoc. In a very short time, they arrived at the periphery of the Walla army camp and carried out a crazy massacre. Among these attacking armies, the 1st Cavalry Division's attack was the fiercest. At least a quarter of them had followed Tuachuo Buhuacan before. For example, the 3rd commander, Hubo was deeply indebted to Tuachuo Buhuacan. Now that their enemy was right in front of them, they went all out. The combat power of the 1st Cavalry Division was already very terrifying. Now that they had gone all out, it was imaginable how desperate it would be. Wherever they went, the Walla cavalry was overturned and covered in blood. The Tatar Division was right behind the 1st Heavenly Cavalry Division. After such a long period of hard work and sacrifice, the Tatar Division had become an existence that represented a powerful force. They appeared like a flood, following closely behind the 1st Heavenly Cavalry Division. Hundreds of arrow formations were formed as they killed their way into the Walla cavalry formation, dealing heavy damage to the enemy. The new 1st Army and the new 2nd Army also rushed out of the first city. Their strength lay in their numbers. Everyone could huddle together to protect themselves and ensure the safety of the left and right flanks. The soldiers only needed to bravely charge forward and take the head of the target. Under such a situation where there was no distraction, everyone performed to their best. For a time, no one could stop them. Lastly, it was the Mo Bay Division and the 20,000 soldiers of the Mo Bay tribe. Relatively speaking, their strength was the weakest, especially the Mo Bay tribe's cavalry. They were used to fighting alone and did not know what it meant to work together. If it was a normal day, with their strength facing the Walla cavalry, even if they had more people, it would be difficult for them to gain any advantage. But today was completely different. They were following behind the main force of the 5-star army, and they were going for a surprise attack. Like this, where they were not in a formation. As long as they were not isolated, they would not be in any danger. In such an environment, it also allowed them to better display their strength and try their best to kill those Walla soldiers who had been beaten until they were dizzy and disoriented. It was not true to say that they were utterly defeated. The explosions of the cannonballs had indeed caused the Vala cavalry to panic. However, when the shrill sound of the bugle horn signaled the arrival of a large army, the Vala cavalry displayed their outstanding military qualities. Many of the cavalry rushed to the stables to find their own war horses. They picked up their own sabers and charged towards the five-star army in the distance. This was the strength of the Walla cavalry. Perhaps they were used to sneak into the camp often. Once they found that the enemy suddenly appeared, they did not need to do anything at all. These cavalrymen could resist based on their experience. At one time, there were even several incidents where they killed the enemy and returned. But this time, they were facing an army that was just as good as the Walla cavalry. It was impossible for them to turn defeat into victory. It was just a matter of how much they could lose. Yeshin's main tent was completely destroyed by the artillery. He was stunned for a while until his subordinates, Hilay and Mutua came to his side to ask for instructions. Only then did Yeshen regain his senses, and his eyes were filled with anger. Report the situation. Lord Leader, according to the reports from the scouts of the various camps, the five-star army has at least 70 to 80,000 people. They are currently attacking our camp from different directions. Although our cavalry warriors are valiantly resisting, the enemy's attack is too fierce and too sudden. Right now, some of the outer camps have already been occupied. General Hilay was originally in charge of the safety of the entire camp, so he did not need to prepare anything when he reported this. The outer camps have already been occupied. Also, you said that the five-star army has 70,000 to 80,000 people. How is that possible? Where did they get so many cavalrymen? If they have this kind of strength, why do they only focus on defending the city? After Yeshen heard the detailed report, his face was filled with disbelief. Before the war, he and Apu had done some research. The five-star army was just a new army in the grasslands. There were around 30,000 people. There was also the famous 1st Cavalry Division that had a few thousand people. Even if they included the 20,000 people guarding Mo Bay City, they only had around 50,000 people. Moreover, Apu was in a hurry to leave because it was confirmed that someone had gone to Ili to cause trouble. It should be the five-star army's doing. Since they had already divided their forces to Ili, how could they still have so many troops left here? And the number of people far exceeded the data. He investigated. Chief, do you think the five-star army recruited a large number of people in the beginning city? You know that there are more than 500,000 people in the beginning city, and they are all gathered together. It is not difficult to select tens of thousands or even more adult men from here. Hilay had already thought about this question in his heart. Seeing that the time was right, he spoke out his guess. Yes, it should be like this. They must want to make a huge formation to force us to retreat. In this way, the crisis of the beginning city can be resolved. Another warrior, Mutua, agreed with Hilay's idea and said aloud. Yeshin's eyes flashed with a thoughtful look. After about 2 seconds, he nodded. Okay, then let's test the strength of the other party. Mutua, I will leave this matter to you. General Hilay, you have to pay attention to the situation of the battalions at all times. If there is any danger, you have to send troops to support in time. Humph, since the five-star army wants to use the commoners as an army to scare this chief, then let's have a good fight. I want to see who will be the winner in a fair and square battle without using any schemes or tricks. Yes, Mutuar saluted and left excitedly. Since the last time he led 30,000 cavalry to attack Mo Bay City and was defeated by the world's best cavalry division and the Tatar division, he felt that he could not raise his head in the army. Now that he had the opportunity to lead the army again, of course he would cherish it and perform well. Chapter 990. He Lei didn't leave, but was stopped by Yes Hen. Go make some calculations and have our elites retreat. If things don't work out, we need to leave the battlefield as quickly as possible. You understand? Leader, do you mean that we might lose this battle? He Lei carefully worded his words. There's a saying in the art of war, it's not wrong to think about defeat before planning for victory. Yes Hen said cunningly. He didn't understand much of the 36 stratagems, but he completely understood the last stratagem, retreat. He could even use it in battle. He had a feeling that Yang Qindong wouldn't do such a thing if he didn't have a certain chance of winning. It was necessary to prepare beforehand. As long as the main force and elites were still there, this battle wouldn't be considered a defeat. After understanding Yeshen's meaning, He Lei asked, worriedly, Leader, should we inform General Mu Tuo? He should be going to the front lines soon. If we suddenly retreat with our elites, won't he be in danger? No need. Mu Tuo should have been executed in the previous battle. Keeping him alive for so long is my benevolence. Let him fight to the death on the battlefield and gain a good reputation. Isn't that better? Yeshen's ruthless side was once again displayed. In the eyes of this kind of person, there was only value in using others. As for friendship and feelings, they didn't exist at all. If anyone wanted to talk about feelings with him, they would be looking for sadness and death. After He Lei heard this, his heart skipped a beat. While he was on guard, his expression didn't change as he said, Yes, leader. This subordinate understands. How would Mu Tuor know about this? He, who had left excitedly, was now leading his army forward. This time, he had to perform well to make up for his previous mistakes. If everything was as the chief and He Lei thought, then the 5-star army should be made up of commoners in disguise. If that was the case, they would not be a match for him at all. His chance to make a contribution had come. As expected of one of the 4 great generals, once Mu Tuor entered the battlefield, he launched fierce attacks again and again. And he was facing the Mo Bei army, an Mo Bei army that had arrived last. Relatively speaking, they were also the weakest group. When the strongest met the stronger, the result was naturally obvious. Although Xian Honghai commanded well and filled in the gaps in time, the soldiers under him lacked the ability to fight together. Before the battle, they could still have a good formation, but once the battle started, they all became scattered sand. They could only fight for themselves, and it was difficult to form any cooperation. Facing the fierce Walla cavalry, they could only retreat. Mu Tuor repelled his opponent, which made him believe in the chief, and He Lei's judgment even more. It also made him have a bold idea, which was to continuously attack and penetrate the enemy. Then he would take the opportunity to see if he could take down the origin city that had no military strength. If he could really do this, he would have made a great contribution. Then, who would dare to look down on him? Mu Tuor's idea was correct. The first city was indeed empty of soldiers. Only an infantry division was left to defend the city. The Walla army did not collapse in the face of a heavy attack. Instead, they still had the strength to fight back. When this matter was reported to Yang Qindong, he was somewhat surprised. Under normal circumstances, in the face of a sudden attack, coupled with the power of the artillery, most troops would not be able to resist. Once they began to retreat, it would become a situation of defeat. In that case, they would have to fight the battle with the wind and have the advantage in their hands. The Walla army's reaction was so unexpected that Yang Qindong understood that any force that could dominate for a period of time was not a fluke. They indeed had their own strengths. And since the Walla army did not retreat, then he did not need to hold back. He just needed to use all his means. Send orders to Hai Wu Division and the reconnaissance team of the new First Army. Let them attack the Walla army from the south and disrupt their formation. The telegrapher, Wang Shan, agreed and turned to leave. Then Beta Persei excitedly entered the courtyard. As soon as he saw Yang Chendong, he excitedly said, "Young master, there is a report from the front. There is a Walla army of about 10,000 that has broken through our encirclement and is moving under the first city." "There is such a thing?" Yang Chendong was stunned. He did not expect that the Walla army not only had the strength to fight back, but also had the intention to seize the first city for the second time. "Yes, we have figured it out. This Walla army is led by Muther, one of the 4 generals under Yeshen. The direction he chose to attack is the Mo Bay Division and the Mo Bay Tribal Coalition. Young master, you know that their combat power is mediocre. If they fight some easy battles, they can achieve good results, but when facing a strong army, it is not enough." Beta Persei reported everything he knew. Just as Beta Persei finished speaking, there was a sudden rumble of thunder in the sky. The heavy rain that had been brewing for a long time was about to fall. Yang Chendong looked up at the sky and then looked at Beta Persei. "Do you mean to take the army out and destroy the Walla army?" "Yes, young master, but I don't know if it's possible." The light in Beta Persei's eyes betrayed the excitement in his heart. As a man, and a hot-blooded man, if there was a chance to gallop on the battlefield, of course he would not refuse. Instead, he would fight for it. Beta Persei's strength was not weak. In the past few years, he had practiced his equestrian skills on the grasslands well. But because he was with Yang Chendong, the opportunity to fight was completely deprived. Now that he finally had a chance to perform well, how could he miss it? Naturally, he would fight for it. Yang Chendong only hesitated for a moment before agreeing to Beta Persei's request. "Your desire to fight is good, but now there is no decent cavalry in the first city. What do you have to fight with this Muther?" "Young master, don't you have your 2 guard brigades? They add up to 1,000 people. That's enough. Besides, although the guard brigade has not stopped training since it was established, they have not experienced any battle after all. After a long time, I'm afraid that their skills will be rusty. There are some opportunities to test their strength. Isn't it the best of both worlds?" Beta Persei opened his mouth and found a good reason for himself. The 2 guard brigades had a total of about 1,000 people. This was also Yang Chendong's last defense force, but at the same time, it was also the strongest defense force. Those who could enter the guard brigade not only had to have a clean background, but their skills were also excellent. In the eyes of many people, being able to enter the guard brigade was a glorious existence. The difficulty was even many times more difficult than entering the cold front and the 1st Cavalry Division. Every member had to be carefully selected by Yang Air and the 2 captains before they could join the team. However, there was a problem, and that was that no matter how many connections you pulled, you still wouldn't be able to get what you wanted. These people were also highly skilled. It was not an exaggeration to say that even the 1st Cavalry Division could not be their opponent in a battle of 1,000 people. This was why Beta Persei had confidence in the 2 guard brigades, and why he dared to make the decision to fight thousands of people. Yang Chendong usually trained with the guard brigade, so he was naturally aware of their strength. Since Beta Persei was pleading like this, and considering that the guard brigade indeed lacked joint combat experience, this might be an opportunity. He finally nodded. "Okay, I can agree to your request, but young master also has a condition." "Young master, please speak." Beta Persei took a step forward excitedly, his face full of eagerness. "I agree to let you send troops, but, young master, I also want to go with you." "How about it?" Yang Chendong also wanted to see the scene of the Walla cavalry charging with 10,000 people. He also had a hot-blooded side to him. "Okay, wait." Beta Persei instinctively agreed, but he quickly came back to his senses and shook his head repeatedly. No, the ladies and Tiger Head have strictly ordered me not to let young master take risks. This is absolutely impossible. Yang Chendong knew that Beta Persei would not agree immediately, so he questioned him. Beta Persei, you just said that with the strength of the guard brigade, it would not be a problem to deal with the Walla. Are you doubting the strength of the guard brigade? No, young master. Beta Persei quickly shook his head and denied. That's good. Since the combat power of the guard brigade is invincible in the world, there is no danger. What is there to be afraid of for young master to follow them? Well, it's settled. The battle doesn't wait for anyone. Go and arrange it immediately. Yang Chendong waved his hand at Beta Persei without any explanation. Beta Persei retreated just like that, only to realize that he had been tricked by the young master. But he knew that even if the young master had made a decision, he could not stop it with his ability. If he continued to talk, he was afraid that the young master would have the opportunity to fight, and he would only be trapped at home. If that was the case, then so be it on the battlefield. As long as he was careful and protected the young master by his side, and with the young master's skills that no one knew how powerful, there should not be any danger. The heavy rain poured down, as if the sky was leaking, and it fell on the grassland, washing away the blood on the cavalry on the battlefield. Mutuo led a total of 20,000 cavalrymen and charged fiercely for a while, breaking through the obstacles of the Mabe division and the Mabe tribe, and finally arrived in front of the west gate of the first city. There were less than 8,000 cavalrymen left behind, and many of them were injured. When he saw the closed gate of the first city in front of him, the original hope in Mutuo's eyes was extinguished by more than half. Under such heavy rain, without any siege weapons, it was impossible for him and his 8,000 cavalrymen to rush into the city. Victory was so close to him, but it was also so far away. General, what should we do? The rain is too heavy, and the brothers are too tired. We have to find a place to rest. A commander in the army walked to Mutuo's side and asked tentatively. Chapter 991. Taking a deep breath, Mutuo knew that he had done something useless this time. With a dejected look, he was ready to give the order to retreat. Wait, look, did the city gate open by itself? A chilly arch interrupted the decision that Mutuo was about to make. He pointed to the west gate of the city and shouted loudly. The heavy rain was still falling, and the west gate opened from the inside. Then, a group of black cavalry under the protection of full armor walked out. A group of 5 people, despite the heavy rain, still came out as usual. The neat order seemed to prove their iron-like discipline. After walking for a full quarter of an hour, all 1,000 black cavalry walked out of the city gate. Finally, Yang Chendong, who was dressed in a particularly eye-catching golden robe, walked out of the city gate under the protection of Beta Persei and the others. Just after he left the city, the heavy gate behind him slowly closed. The sound was so clear that no matter how bad the weather was, it still clearly reached everyone's ears. In the past, when Yang Chendong went out, he always wore a red robe and a cloak. It could be said that he had always been concerned about the feelings of the North and South Daming. But this time, Ming tricked him and obviously hurt his heart. At this moment, he no longer hid and put on the golden robe that represented imperial power. Yang Chendong was also dressed in black armor, only revealing a pair of murderous eyes. When he looked ahead and saw the 8,000 Walla cavalry, he did not show the slightest nervousness. On the contrary, he said in a very calm voice, "The black cavalry only belongs to you. This is the most powerful existence. But after today, I hope to add a new title to you, Long Way. The young master hopes that none of you will fall behind, and can become a member of the new Long Way. Next, use the steel sword in your hand to prove your strength. Long way, long way, long way. 1,000 black cavalry made the same sound. For a moment, this shout seemed to have covered and surpassed the sound of thunder, echoing between heaven and earth. Seeing that the young master had raised everyone's morale to the extreme with just a few words, Beta Persei knew that it was time to launch an attack. At that moment, he pulled out his steel sword and pointed it forward, shouting loudly, "Brothers, it's time to prove our strength. Let's go." Charge! 1,000 black knights rushed out amidst the battle cries. Even young Qindong, who was in the group, did the same. He pulled the reins of the white dragon with one hand and held the shining steel sword with the other. He exerted force in his legs and rushed forward. Kill! Mu Tuar's eyes also flickered with intense killing intent. If one looked closely, one could see the unconcealable excitement and agitation. Originally, he thought that he would have to return empty-handed this time. Unexpectedly, this loyal duke of the great Ming dynasty rushed out on his own. When he first saw the flag of the god of war, he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. However, when he saw that the person wearing the golden battle robe should be the god of war in the eyes of others, and the god of war in the eyes of leader Yeshen, he knew that his chance to make a great contribution had come. Using his frenzied roar to vent his emotions, Mutuo urged his horse forward, leading the 8,000 cavalrymen behind him to encircle the 1,000 black cavalry like a swarm of locusts, looking as though they were about to swallow them whole. Facing an enemy 8 times their number, the 1,000 black knights were not afraid at all. On the contrary, they were filled with endless killing intent and excitement. They had the best individual qualities and the strongest armor to protect themselves. Even their war horses were fully protected. Most importantly, the steel swords in their hands were the latest products. It was said that a very rare material was added to them, allowing them to achieve the effect of cutting through iron like mud. However, these steel swords had never appeared before, and no one knew about it. Even during training and experiments, they had only cut their own war horses. Now, they finally had the chance to experiment on the enemy, who would be courteous and fall behind. Fighting alongside the 6th young master was the proudest thing in their lives. At this moment, all the soldiers gave it their all so that they could continuously kill the enemy and show off their might. At the same time, they could also become the first batch of members of Long Way. The 1,000 black knights carried an incomparable sense of pride. They wore impenetrable armor and held indestructible sharp swords. They rode on their war horses and raised their swords. The intense killing intent emitted from their bodies seemed to make the rain between heaven and earth tremble. The rain seemed to not dare to touch their bodies. Kill! Dao Xiao, as the leader of the second guard team, rushed to the forefront. As the tip of the arrow formation at the front, it was as if there was no one in front of him. He fiercely stabbed towards the wall of cavalry in front of him. The steel swords were constantly waved in midair. Wherever they went, the Walla cavalry soldiers who were close to Dao Xiao were all stunned. They had all discovered an unimaginable fact. That was whenever their scimitars or sabers collided with the steel swords, they would be broken. Even though the cavalry was terrifying, the impact was even more terrifying. However, when the cavalry soldiers lost their weapons, they were like wolves without sharp teeth. The threat they brought to people was relatively small. Dao Xiao's victory was just the beginning. In the following period of time, as the Black Knights continued to attack, more and more enemy sabers were cut in half. When many of the Walla cavalry soldiers reacted and wanted to avoid the sabers of the Black Knights, they sadly discovered that the sabers in their hands could not penetrate the black armor. They could not achieve the effect of killing or even injuring the enemy. On the contrary, when the steel swords in the hands of the Black Knights were no longer obstructed by the sabers, when they slashed the bodies of the Black Knights, it was a life. Unless it was necessary in the eyes of the Black Knights, there were only dead people. There were no captives. After Dao Xiao quickly dug deep into the Walla cavalry, the leader of the first guard team, Qiu Vi also quickly engaged in battle with the Walla cavalry. In the following period of time, countless lives fell in front of them. In terms of combat strength, equipment, quality, and combat strength, no one was a match for the Black Knights. It had been a long time since the Black Knights participated in a proper battle. For a time, many people only remembered that there was a very powerful 1st Cavalry Division on the grasslands, but forgot that there was a Black Knights that was even more powerful than them. And this battle was the time to verify and continue their legend. On the west gate tower of the beginning city, although the rain was still pouring, there were more and more soldiers and people standing on top of it. They rushed over after hearing the news that the Heaven Khan was going to attack personally. They wanted to see the Heaven Khan's glory. The facts did not disappoint them. Although it seemed that the military strength of the two sides was obviously not equal, with 1,000 against 8,000. If such a thing was told to anyone, they would probably arbitrarily choose the winning side. However, it happened to the Heaven Khan. This person who constantly created miracles seemed to be very normal for him to win. He was originally a messenger sent by the longevity heaven to the grasslands. Anyone who made an enemy of him was equivalent to provoking the gods. It was only a matter of time before they were punished. Look, the person wearing the golden god of war is the Heaven Khan. Look, the Heaven Khan is moving. Heavens, the way he wields his saber is so perfect. Obviously, the person who shouted this must be the grassland woman. The difference in their living environment made them more cheerful and more proactive. The Heaven Khan had already rushed into the enemy camp. His golden battle robe was so dazzling that it attracted the attention of countless Walla cavalry. It was just that on top of the city walls, no one was worried about Yang Chendong. It was as if in their eyes, no one in this world could defeat the Heaven Khan. Therefore, no one felt that the Heaven Khan was cruel when he kept waving his saber, causing blood and limbs to splatter everywhere. Even some of the more timid girls on the city gate tower could only see the heavenly Khan's imposing figure and clean movements. Yang Chendong had indeed killed his way into the enemy camp. He was covered in black armor from head to toe, so he was not afraid of any opponent at all. In this kind of battle that was close to a one-sided massacre, he had to show enough bravery and let the world sing about it. He had to make those who worshipped him worship him even more, and those who did not worship him before become his admirers. At Yang Chendong's current position, his every move represented a political significance. He was not a person who liked to kill, but at this moment, he had to show enough courage and drive to kill. This would play a very positive role in his future rule here. Beta Persei and the others followed closely beside Yang Chendong, and at the same time, they kept waving their sabers. The enemies who rushed over died under their feet, and the enemies who rushed over were chopped to death in front of them. They were invincible all the way. That's Yang Chendong. Kill him, and our names will go down in history. Kill him, and we will make a great contribution. Mu Tuo saw Yang Chendong from afar and then shouted. His eyes were bloodshot, representing the excitement in his heart at the moment. This was Yang Chendong. How many people hated him to the bone and wished for him to die immediately. Unfortunately, most of those who had such thoughts and put it into action had become a pile of bones. Now that an opportunity had been thrown in front of him, there was no way Mu Tuo would not seize it. Mu Tuo widened his eyes and slapped his warhorse with all his might. At this moment, he waved his saber and approached Yang Chendong. At this moment, He could even see the miraculous martial art in front of him. He seemed to see the scene of his legend being sung by tens of thousands of people in the grasslands. Get lost! A loud roar interrupted Mu Tuor's fantasy. It was Beta Persei's saber, to repel and kill anyone who wanted to approach the young master from both sides. Chapter 992. Mu Tuor was naturally different from ordinary cavalry. Seeing the blade coming at him, he dodged nimbly. The steel blade brushed past his shoulder and disappeared in a flash. With a sneer in his eyes, he did something that he would regret for the rest of his life. He swung his blade at Beta Persei's body. The speed of the blade was so fast that the Shadow Knight protecting Beta Persei did not have time to block it. Seeing that the attack was about to succeed, although the blade could not hurt Beta Persei due to the invulnerable black armor, it would inevitably bring shame to Beta Persei. Just as the blade was about to fall, Beta Persei's majestic body suddenly turned nimbly, making a move that did not match his tall body at all. Just as the blade was about to fall on the black armor, the steel blade in his hand finally blocked it at the last moment. The collision of the two weapons produced a very crisp sound. Mu Tuor was not discouraged by the fact that his blade was blocked and did not succeed. Yang Qindong wasn't his target in the first place. He was just itching to fight back. Since he couldn't hurt Yang Qindong, he didn't want to waste any more time here. He had to find Yang Qindong as soon as possible and kill him. Riding on his warhorse, Mu Tuor turned around once more and saw Yang Qindong right in front of him. Moreover, it was his opponent's back. Knowing that an opportunity had presented itself, Mu Tuor was naturally excited. He instinctively raised his blade and stabbed forward, his face flashing with the look of a treacherous scheme that was about to succeed. But in the next moment, this action suddenly stopped. It was for no other reason than because he found that the original saber in his hand had been broken into half. Including the hilt, he only held half of the saber in his hand. He did not know that after his attack was blocked by Beta Persei, the saber had become like this. Just as he was wondering why the saber had become like this, Yang Qindong, who was right in front of him, suddenly turned around and slashed at him. This strike was fast and accurate. The horizontal slash landed right on Mu Tuor's neck, bringing the head that could still make any expression into the air. Mu Tuor had died in battle. Even at the moment of his death, he couldn't help but wonder what was going on. Why did his saber suddenly break into two? Could it be that this person was really sent by the longevity, heaven? Could it be that anyone who went against him was seeking their own death? He wanted to continue asking questions, but Mu Tuor no longer had the chance. At this moment, he couldn't be more dead. What he didn't know was that Yang Qindong had only turned around because he had sensed the danger behind him. The Heavenly Khan didn't care about him at all, even if he reported his name. This was because in front of Yang Qindong, even if it was Yes Hen, it was nothing to be proud of. They were not on the same starting line to begin with. Mu Tuor had died in battle, and thousands of Walla cavalry were buried with him. And as the rain grew heavier, more and more people died, and more people were buried with him. And this battle only lasted for more than half an hour, and it was over after a little more than an hour. The new army had returned to the beginning city. They were sent by Tiger's man. After learning that someone had broken through the Mo Bay Division's defensive line, he was worried about the safety of this place. So he sent Deng Yu, the leader of the new army, to come personally. Of course, if Tiger's man knew that the young master had personally participated in the battle below the city, he would have given up everything and rushed over. The new army came, but by the time they arrived, the battle was already over. Nearly half of the 8,000 Walla army were killed, including the main general, Mu Tuor. The other half had already dismounted and knelt down to surrender. After witnessing the power of the Black Knights, their inner defenses collapsed, and they no longer had the courage to fight with their sabers. On the other hand, none of the Black Knights died in battle, and only 7 of their brothers were injured. As long as they rested properly, they could immediately rejoin the battlefield. 1,000 against 8,000, and they still managed to achieve such a result. This was the strength of the elites. 6th Young Master. When Deng Yu saw Yang Qindong, he excitedly dismounted and knelt down. You came at the right time. Immediately assist the infantry division in the city to take this prisoner away. Now that we are out, we have to go to the main battlefield to take a look. After Yang Qindong gave Deng Yu an encouraging look, he ordered Beta Persei to open the city gate and solve the problem of the prisoner. Just as Yang Qindong was engaged in a bloody battle with the Walla Cavalry, Hai's 5th Division, and the new Army Reconnaissance Group were also ordered to launch a fierce attack on the rear of the Walla Army. Hai's 5th Division, which was made up entirely of musketeers, fully displayed their destructive power. Facing the unprepared rear of the Walla Cavalry, they only charged and killed nearly 1,000 people, causing great chaos. The morale of the Walla army, which had already suffered defeat after defeat on the front line and was riddled with holes, finally began to waver when they received news that their rear had been attacked. Originally, they believed what their leader said. They had a great advantage in numbers, and as long as they could pay a certain price to stabilize the situation, then it would be time for them to counterattack with all their strength. The reality did not match the plan, which made many Walla generals waver. Even as the leader, Yeshen could see that the situation was unfavorable. He knew that if the battle continued, he would be the one to lose. General Hele, is everything ready? In the temporary main tent, he looked at the reports of defeat one after another. He had already lost the news of a decisive battle with Yang Qindong and had completely given up on the idea of a decisive battle. Leader, everything is ready. According to your plan, if we retreat now, we can withdraw about 80,000 people. Hele, who was already prepared, said aloud, Good, notify everyone. When the sky turns dark and the rain stops, we will retreat. As for those who are not on the retreat list, we can order them to launch a counterattack now. We must create an illusion that we are determined to fight to the death. This will help us maintain a safe distance between both sides. Yeshen's voice was calm, but the exhaustion on his face and even the trace of fear in his heart had already betrayed him. Once the order was given, the Walla army's counterattack began. It was as if they didn't care about their lives. The counterattack of tens of thousands of soldiers increased the pressure on the advancing 5-Star Corps, causing several armies to have no choice but to retreat and fight in groups. Other than the 1st Cavalry Division, which had already split into 5 units, most of the 5-Star Army on the battlefield had already gathered together. Retreat. Yeshen, who received the report from the scout, immediately gave the order. When the sky turned dark, the Tile army that had been charging forward courageously suddenly retreated like a receding tide. The generals of the 5-Star Army, who were gathering their troops, realized that they had been tricked. At this moment, it was already too late to give the order for the entire army to pursue. Yeshen gave the order to retreat. Following that, he sent out 5,000 cavalrymen to chase after the Longwu division and the scouting group in order to prevent them from interfering with his retreat. In the end, he also sent out 5,000 cavalrymen to block the 1st Cavalry Division that was chasing after him. The original 80,000 retreating soldiers were reduced to 70,000 just like that. Under the cover of the night's rain, they quickly retreated from the battlefield. It had to be said that the Walla cavalry's discipline was still very strong. Even under such circumstances, they still retreated. However, the 10,000 cavalrymen he sent out were quickly killed and captured. Whether it was facing the fierce attacks of the Longwu division and the scouting group, or facing the bravery of the 1st Cavalry Division. These cavalrymen would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they charged forward. After defeating another 10,000 cavalrymen, the 1st Cavalry Division's commander, Hubo, and a few others suggested that they should continue the chase. No matter what, they couldn't let Yeshen escape. However, at the crucial moment, Division Commander Tian, who gave the order to not give chase before the main force arrived. After all, Yeshen had 70,000 elite cavalrymen. If they charged forward alone, they would most likely be surrounded and heavily injured. Although it was said that with the strength of the 1st Cavalry Division, they were not afraid of anyone. However, if they knew that they couldn't do it, it wasn't bravery but stupidity. Yang Qindong came to the main battlefield early in the morning of the 2nd day. At this moment, the heavy rain finally stopped after 3 days, leaving only a light drizzle in the air. When he saw the corpses and blood everywhere he looked, he couldn't help but sigh. The setting sun on the battlefield is as red as blood. White bones are exposed for thousands of miles in the wilderness. Young Master, the scouting group reported that Yeshen brought 70,000 Walla cavalry back to Jingzhou City and Shajing City. At the same time, they also fought with the Ming army not far from the city. Beta Persei looked at the battle report that had just been sent and reported to Yang Qindong. Fighting with the Ming army? What's going on? Yang Qindong asked with some confusion. Didn't they already join forces? Why would they fight at this time? For this question, Beta Persei, of course, didn't know how to answer. He just ordered people to investigate again. Yang Qindong didn't have time to think about what was going on. Since the battle had reached this point, if he stopped now, it would be inevitable that he would be looked down upon. Perhaps in the future, there would be people who would do the same thing. So this time, he had to get some interest, and also take this opportunity to tell everyone that the 5-star army was not to be trifled with. Whoever wanted to cause trouble, they had to be prepared to pay the price. Order the 3rd Cavalry Division of the new 2nd Army, Mabe Division, and the Mabe Mongol tribe to stay and clean up the battlefield. Order Yang Si in the city to take the Logistics Division out of the city to assist. The rest of the army set out and go to Shajing City. We want to recover Jingzhou City and Shajing City. Yang Qindong said in a heroic tone. Taking these 2 cities was the interest that Yang Qindong demanded from Yeshen. At the same time, he also opened up the passage from the 1st city to Ili City. Otherwise, once the Ming army took advantage of the situation, he was afraid that if he wanted to reach out in the future, he would be restricted. Chapter 993. Jingzhou City. It was one of the few well-preserved cities on the grassland. In the past, this place had always belonged to the Tatar Empire and was one of the important cities under the rule of Tuachuobuhua. It was not until the Battle of the Beginning City that he lost to Yang Qindong. He, who led 3,000 elites, was besieged by Yang Qindong. In the end, he died in battle, and these cities became ownerless. Yeshen seized the opportunity and occupied this place, which became the front line for him to extend his black hand to the 1st city. But all of this was far from over. At the beginning of the year, the Ming army sent out 400,000 troops from the north, south, and west. Soon, Jingzhou City changed hands and became the Xian mansion of the Ming army. But soon, the situation changed. The Ming army's southern front, Yang Hong, was defeated. The Walla also invited Yi Li to join forces with him to come to the grassland. The Xian Mansion army had to retreat in the face of great pressure, and the Jingzhou city changed hands again. After that, the Walla army led by Yeshen and the Ili army joined forces to besiege the 1st city. This place became the base for transporting provisions from the rear. But then, Ili army's nest was attacked. Prime Minister Arab had no choice but to retreat. Taking the opportunity, the 5-star army launched a counterattack and fought a great battle with the Walla army under the first city. It seemed that the battle situation was unpredictable, but as long as one was observant, one could see the opportunity in it. For example, Deng Chong, the military supervisor eunuch of the Xian Mansion army, was one of them. He boasted that he was smart. After receiving the order from the chief eunuch, Jining, Deng Chong mobilized the genie guards to put Shi Wanshan, Ancient River, and Ning Wenfeng under house arrest. Because of this, he obtained the power to control the army. When the first city defense battle was in full swing, he had been paying attention to the movements of various parties, imagining if he could find any benefits from it. For this matter, he took the initiative to find Shi Wanshan and the other two who were under house arrest. Under the righteous cause, the four of them discussed and finally came to a unified opinion. If the five-star army lost this battle, the Ming army would take Saihan Mountain and make it the gateway to the northwest to protect the safety of Tulu City. On the other hand, if the five-star army won, they would think of a way to take Jingzhou City or Shajing City and regain control of the situation here. Now that they had a plan, all they had to do was wait for news from the front line. After sending countless scouts, the five-star army, they finally came back to the first city defense army. Of course, of this SSSSSS, don't ask why. Don't ask what the reason is. Yang Qindong can give people this kind of feeling of confidence. Previously, Shi Wanshan and the others were already puzzled by the fact that they only defended the beginning city without attacking. Logically speaking, with the strength of the five-star army in this area, it was impossible for them to be so helpless. The current counterattack had proven everything. It wasn't that the five-star army didn't have the strength, but that they had been waiting for something. Of course, they did not know that Yang Qindong wanted to use the defensive battle to train his troops. At the same time, he wanted to see if there would be any problems with the defense of the first city. After all, he couldn't stay here forever, so he had to be aware of everything here. Regardless of Yang Qindong's thoughts, Deng Chong was more interested in his own opportunity. Since everyone said that the Walla army would be defeated, what he needed to do now was to attack and occupy Jingzhou City. Regarding Deng Chong's Shi Wanshan and the other two had the same opinion. According to them, the Walla army might be defeated, but after all, they had hundreds of thousands of cavalry. Even if they fought with the five-star army, they wouldn't be defeated in one battle. If they were to attack and occupy Jingzhou City now, it would still be very dangerous. It was better to wait and see. When the five-star army appeared, everyone would cooperate. The other party would attack Shajing City, and they would attack Jingzhou City. Shi Wanshan and the other two's words belonged to the old cities. For Deng Chong, who wanted to make contributions, this was not in line with his interests. On the surface, Deng Chong agreed to Shi Wanshan and the other two's request. However, after leaving the yamen of the three nobles, Deng Chong changed his mind. He decided to take a risk and take down Jingzhou City. Deng Chong's thinking was very simple. Once they could take Jingzhou City and station a certain number of soldiers there, even if the defeated Walla army was dissatisfied, they wouldn't waste time attacking the city. In this way, the great merit of taking Jingzhou City would be his alone. In this way, he would have a chance to return to the capital and enter the imperial palace. Only by working at the emperor's side could a eunuch be promoted faster and have more hope of standing out. Having made his decision, Deng Chong did not let the merit go to his head. He chose to take Jingzhou City through deception rather than a forceful attack. In other words, he sent people to appear outside Jingzhou City in the name of labor. If they could smoothly enter the city, that would be for the best. At the very least, if they could trick a portion of the Walla army out, the pressure of the siege would be greatly reduced. One could say that Deng Chong truly had made many preparations. For this reason, he had even taken out a portion of the limited provisions in Yamen and sent it to Jingzhou City. But he had never imagined that when Tingshu's army of 10,000 had been wiped out, Yang Qindong had intentionally framed the Baiming army. In other words, the Walla army did not trust the Baiming army at this moment. Deng Chong knew nothing of this. Just when he had wanted to use their relationship as allies to deal a heavy blow to the retreating Walla army, it had been the other side who had made the first move. At the gates of Jingzhou City, the Baiming army had pretended to be a labor force and was preparing to strike, but the Walla army had beaten them at their own game, happily exiting the city. Then, the 5,000 cavalry left behind to guard the city attacked, catching the Xian Mansion army off guard. The 5,000 cavalrymen did not greet him and charged forward. It was only when their sabers landed on the Xuanfu soldiers next that Deng Chong realized that he had once again overestimated his opponent's credibility. It turned out that this was a heartless person, a race that could kick their friendship away like a ball and betray their allies. Before the Xian Mansion army could even take out their weapons, they were defenseless. Nearly 10,000 of them were killed by the 5,000 Walla cavalry, and countless more were injured. Deng Chong, who had not only failed to complete his mission, but also suffered heavy losses, was very angry. He quickly transferred 30,000 cavalry from Sanbuchuan City. He did not believe that the Walla army, with only 5,000, could do anything. It was at this time that even more unfavorable news came. The Vara army had retreated after the battle with the 5-Star Army, and their main force of 70,000 had retreated back to the Shajing region. Their vanguard had coincidentally clashed with the 30,000 cavalry he had sent. Needless to say, the Xian Mansion soldiers were once again defeated due to their inferior numbers and combat strength. The 30,000 cavalrymen were not even able to display half of their battle prowess. After losing another few thousand cavalrymen, Deng Chong had no choice but to release Shi Wanshan and the other two. However, in the face of such a disadvantageous situation, the only thing Commander Shi could do was to retreat into the city and prepare to defend the city. Sanbuchuan City once entered entered a defensive state, but this time it was not the Walla army that surrounded the city, but the 5-Star Army. Following closely behind was the 5-Star Army that was truly here to pick the peaches. When the Walla army retreated to the Shajing region, Yang Qindong led the 5-Star Army's main force of several tens of thousands to rush over. When Yeshen led his troops into Jingzhou City, Yang Qindong rushed over. Following that, the Haiwu Division took out the rocket launchers that they had brought along and aimed at the Jingzhou City's north gate that seemed to be ready for battle. It was the same siege, but the difference in weapons meant that the outcome would be different. When the city gates opened, the 1st Cavalry Division rushed into the city, brandishing their blades, and began a merciless slaughter. They wanted to vent all their hatred towards Yeshen for killing Tuachuo Buhua. Only Yeshen reacted quickly. When he heard that the North Gate had fallen in such a short period of time, he knew that the situation was not good. He left behind the original 5,000 cavalry to defend the city, and then led the 70,000 main force to retreat. Facing the full-force counterattack of the 5-Star Army, the Walla Army's heart was unsteady, and they retreated step by step. Not only did they quickly lose Jingzhou City, they also lost the nearby Shajing City, and left the region like a stray dog. Yang Qindong knew the logic of not chasing a cornered enemy. Right now, he was not ready to fight a decisive battle with the Walla Army. After days of marching in the rain, the 5-Star Army was exhausted. Since their strategic goal had been achieved, and they had taken over Shajing City and Junzhou City, then they should know when to stop. They should stop chasing and digest the fruits of war first. While resting, he did not forget to gather grass and beat rabbits. and surrounded Sambuchuan city. Previously, when the Walla and Ili joined forces to attack Shur City, the Ming Xian Mansion army played a very disgraceful role. Now, it was time to settle the score. Sambuchuan City was once again surrounded. Shur Wanshan and the others in the city did not know whether to laugh or cry. Originally, they thought that the result of the war was them taking advantage of the opportunity to reap the benefits. But because of Deng Chang's rash action, they lost all the opportunities, and now they were like turtles in a jar. Although the five-star army outside the city only had 40,000 to 50,000 people, and the Xian Mansion army in the city still had 170,000 people, but for some reason, after the opponent became the five-star army, General Shi Wanshan could not give the order to counterattack. There were too many facts that proved the strength of the five-star army, and that they could not be provoked. Even if he really sent out the army, even if he won, it would only be a Pyrrhic victory. Who knew if the Walla cavalry would rush over at that time to reap the benefits? They did not go out of the city to set up a formation. They only sent a messenger out of the city to ask for help from Governor Shi Hung. Then the five-star army and the Xian Mansion army faced each other across the city. On the surface, it looked like the well water did not interfere with the river water. Yang Chendong indeed did not have the intention to attack Sambuchuan City. Otherwise, he would not have given the other party a chance to ask for help. The reason why he did this was for his own big plan, so that he could smoothly ascend to the throne. Chapter 994. In the temporary tent, Yang Chendong called for the commander of Hai Wu Division, He Gong, in order to achieve his goal. Division commander, according to our intelligence, I'm afraid that it won't be long before the 200,000 reinforcements from northern Ming come to us. What I want you to do is to destroy the 100 cannons that they brought with them. Is there a problem? Facing Yang Chendong, He Gong excitedly replied, Sixth young master, in order to achieve our goal, can we use all the weapons we have? Yes, but there's a condition. It's best if you don't injure anyone. Yang Chendongqing nodded. He knew that it was impossible to hit those cannons in the army without killing a person, but he was also a Han person. If he could kill one less, he would kill one less. Understood. I promise to complete the mission. Knowing that they could use advanced weapons to launch destructive attacks, He Gong was full of confidence. Hai Wu Division also had some rocket launchers, which would become the best weapons to destroy the enemy's cannons. When the news of Sambuchuan being surrounded arrived, Ming's commander-in-chief, Marquis Wukinghao Shi Hung, had already arrived at Xuanfu City with 200,000 reinforcements. Before leaving Xuanfu, he also sent someone to the capital to inform them that he wanted to fight the five-star army. According to Shi Hung, the five-star army had just fought with the Walla army and the Ili army. Although they had won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. At the moment, they only had 50,000 people left in the Shajing region. Once he arrived, he would join forces with the Xuanfu Division and have nearly 400,000 soldiers. At that time, even if each of them spit, they would be able to drown the five-star army. The moment Shi Hung led the army out of Xuanfu City, the informants of the city's Bureau of Security sent a telegram. Wang Shan held the telegram and appeared in front of Yang Chendong. Sixth young master, urgent telegram from the front. After reading the telegram, Yang Chendong's expression didn't change. He nodded and said, Send a telegram to the person in charge of the Security Bureau of the capital. Tell him to contact our informants immediately and have them put pressure on Dai Zong. After arranging for Wang Shan to send the message, Yang Chendong ordered Beta Persei to call Tai Hu, the captain of the Wolf Fang Special Forces, and gave him a secret and important task. Sambuchuan City became quiet again. While both sides were waiting for something to happen, they looked to each other peacefully. Inside the city, Shi Wanshan and the others were naturally preparing for war. The five-star army outside the city began to reinforce the two cities, Jingzhou City and Shajing City. At the same time, they sent a telegram to Yang Si, the logistics division commander in Shiqing City, to prepare to immigrate 50,000 people to the two cities. At the same time, they also prepared enough military supplies to transport to the two cities. Yang Qindong's attitude showed that he had already treated Shajing City and Jingzhou City as his own vegetable garden. He didn't take the hundreds of thousands of Ming army in front of him seriously. It was as if victory was in his hands. Compared to the five-star army, Shi Heng's reinforcements also progressed very quickly. In just 3 days, they left Teru City and set foot on the fertile and desolate grassland. Not long after the 200,000 reinforcements left Talu City, news came from the vanguard that Shi Wanshan had sent people to receive them. At the same time, they also brought an important piece of news. It was news that the beginning city was very empty. Shi Heng, who was anxious to make a great contribution, didn't want to see these people at first. In his opinion, he was a dignified governor, and Marquis Wuqing, who was personally conferred by the Ming Emperor. If he did everything by himself, wouldn't it be too degrading? But when he heard the news about Shiqing City, he finally couldn't hold back the curiosity and excitement in his heart. He ordered the vanguard general to immediately bring the people to him. Half a day later, the people sent by Shi Wanshan came to Shi Heng's tent. In front of the big tent, a total of more than 10 people came to the rescue team. Only the captain was allowed to enter the big tent, and he had to be searched. The others could only guard outside the tent. From this point alone, it could be seen that the security was very tight. In fact, inside the main tent, there were 8 elite bodyguards led by Shi Heng to protect them. These 8 people were all warriors, 1 in 100. In a face-to-face situation, 5 or 6 people couldn't get close to them. They were the masters among the masters. The leader, who was the captain of the rescue team, was allowed to enter the main tent. When he entered, he knelt on the ground with a look of fear and trepidation. When he kowtowed, he didn't even find the right direction. He just kowtowed to a place where there was no one around. This very rash action first caused the 9 people in the tent to be stunned. Then there was a burst of laughter. Obviously, everyone was so stimulated by the captain's action that they couldn't help laughing. The 8 bodyguards, who had their hands on their waist sabers, also relaxed their vigilance at this moment. How could such a cowardly person carry out an assassination? In the burst of laughter, Shi Heng, who was sitting on the high seat, shouted to the person kneeling below, "Marquis is here. Tell me, what is your name, what is your position, and what are you here for?" Oh. After hearing Shi Heng's voice, the person dared to raise his head and take a look. When he saw where Shi Heng was, he quickly lowered his head again. Then he slowly got up and bowed his head to Shi Heng, saying, "In reply to Marquis, everyone calls me Little Huzi. I am a centurion by Commander Shi's side. This time, I am here on orders from Commander Shi to tell Marquis a shocking news." Shi Heng didn't have any doubts about Huzi's words. The other party was wearing the Ming army's uniform and was so timid. Such a person couldn't be a spy sent by others. Therefore, Shi Heng nodded and said, "Shocking news? But I don't know what it is that is worthy of the word shocking." Marquis, Commander Shi said that after more than a month of defense, the first city is already an arrow at the end of its flight. This time, the first city is just an empty city. If Marquis can send troops there, you will definitely be able to settle it in one battle and make a great military achievement. When Huzi talked about the news, he was much more agile and seemed to be less nervous. Shi Heng listened to these words carefully and was not moved. He had already sent people to inquire about it. The first city's walls were high and strong. Even if it wasn't heavily guarded, as long as the city gate was heavily closed, it would be extremely difficult to take it down. Secondly, he didn't believe that Shi Wanshan, who was from the same family as him, would be so kind. Wasn't he worried that the 5-star army would take down Sambuchuan City? Wasn't he worried about his own safety? A selfish person like Shi Hung naturally wouldn't believe that he would put himself in danger for the sake of others. Therefore, when he heard Huzi's words, he just sneered and said, "Your Commander Shi is really kind. Does he want our army to attack the first city and attract the attention of the 5-star army so that they can solve the siege?" No, Marquis is thinking too much. Commander Shi said that Sambuchuan City has long been prepared for defense. It will be very difficult for the 5-star army to take it down with their current strength. There's no need to worry about the safety there for the time being. On the other hand, if Marquis can take down the first city, it will be a great merit. As a support, my commander will also be honored. It will more or less reduce the loss of the army and the sin of not taking the opportunity to take down Shajing City and Jingzhou City. I just hope that after Marquis takes down the first city, he can put in some good words for the Xian Mansion army in front of the emperor. Huzi also lowered his head and said these. Logically speaking, these words were still somewhat reasonable. This time, when they went to the grassland, the Datong army naturally didn't perform well. The Xian Mansion army wasn't any better. Even if they waited for Shi Hung to bring reinforcements to solve the siege, they wouldn't get any credit. Since that was the case, it was better to take another path. For example, if they could take down the first city, it would definitely be a great merit. They could use their merits to make up for their mistakes and even be praised. After Shi Hung understood the reason behind it, his expression became better. Well, your commander's idea is good. It's just that the first city's walls are so tall, how can it be so easy to take down? If it can't be done in a short period of time, and the main force of the 5-star army is attracted back, then wouldn't Marquis be attacked from two sides? That won't happen. My lord has already arranged spies in the first city. As long as the army arrives, the city gates will open from the inside. At that time, Marquis can lead the army in. I think with your 200,000 troops, once they enter the city, who can stop them? Huzi said repeatedly. Spy, open the city gate. What's going on? At this moment, Shi Hung was really excited. If there was really such an arrangement, then he really had hoped to take down the first city. If that was the case, then he would definitely make a great contribution. At that time, it would be easy for him to be conferred the title of Duke. Shi Hung became excited. And Huzi also said with a look of fear and trepidation, "How could such a secret be known by a small character like me? But my commander has already written a secret letter. His life must be handed over to Marquis personally. The letter is here. Please take a look." Unknowingly, a secret letter appeared in Huzi's hand. Then, taking this opportunity, he took a few steps forward and was about to come in front of Shi Hung. "Stop right there." A bodyguard, standing at the side, sternly shouted. He stepped forward bravely and blocked in front of Huzi. As a guard, he naturally wouldn't let anyone get close to his master without the permission of the Marquis. Huzi, who was stopped, didn't show any anger. Instead, he said with a face of fear, "This is the commander's order. The letter must be handed over to Marquis personally." "It's okay. There's no difference between handing it to the guard and handing it to Marquis," Shi Hung said indifferently. Then, the guard glared at Huzi angrily. Then he grabbed the secret letter in Huzi's hand, turned around, and bent down to pass the secret letter to Shi Hung, who was close at hand. Chapter 9, 95. It was also at this time that the bodyguard turned around and bent over when he felt the weight on his waist lighten. The saber that he carried with him had disappeared. Before he could react, his waist was tightened again. Under the great force, he fell to the ground. Then, a figure replaced Shurhang's position. An iron saber was placed on Shurhang's neck. Of course, all this was done by Tiger. The so-called Tiger was the captain of the Langya Special Forces, Tai Hu. This time, he was carrying out the beheading operation arranged by Yang Qindong. The difference was that he didn't mean to kill Shurhang. As long as Shurhang was willing to cooperate, everything would be fine. Otherwise, he would have to start a massacre. The iron sword was placed on Shurhang's neck. Tai Hu's voice and behavior were completely different from before. He said calmly, "If you don't want to die, don't shout or move. Otherwise, this sword will not recognize you." As he spoke, Tai Hu purposely increased his strength. Immediately, the iron sword went into Shurhang's neck, causing blood to flow out. Shurhang was also a general on the battlefield, so he had some skills. Just as he was about to resist, he felt a killing intent wrap around his entire body. He finally knew that this person called Huzi wasn't just talking nonsense. He really had the intention to kill him. Most importantly, he felt that his every move was being watched by this person. No matter what he did, the iron sword would cut his throat first. In order to survive, he had to be obedient. Sensing that Shurhang did not dare to struggle, Tai Hu let out a sigh of relief. He then said, "Tell your soldiers to retreat. At the same time, call in my brothers outside. Hurry up. If you're a bit slower, I'll kill you." I'll call. Shurhang struggled as he spoke. Then he said to one of the soldiers, "Quick, why aren't you following Hero Hu's instructions?" The 8 soldiers really wanted to take action. They believed that with their strength, they could definitely surround and kill this man called Tiger. However, they couldn't guarantee the safety of their general. At this moment, they could only listen to his orders and walk out of the tent. They let the dozen people that Tai Hu brought with him into the tent. Skinny Monkey, King Kong, Violent Ape, Silver Hand, Steel Leg, and others quickly entered the main tent. When they saw that Tai Hu was holding Shurhang hostage, they all laughed heartlessly. Iron Head is Iron Head. He completed the task cleanly and beautifully. It's admirable. As soon as they entered the tent, they acted as casually as if they were entering their own backyard. First, they looked around, then came to Shurhang's side and surrounded him tightly. Although they were wearing the ordinary military uniform of the Northern Ming Army, King Kong and the others gave the 8 bodyguards a very dangerous feeling. Their movements seemed to be without order, but if you wanted to take the opportunity to make a move, you would find that they were on guard everywhere. This feeling told the 8 bodyguards that the dozen or so people who came in were experts among experts. Shurhang completely lost the hope of escaping when he fell into the hands of Tai Hu and the other members of the Langya Special Forces. He could only be manipulated by them. "Shurhang, if you want to live, then cooperate with us. When the time comes, I can guarantee that I will spare your life. Otherwise, we'll fight to the death. It's just that we're just commoners, so if we die, we die. But Marquis sure is different. There's still a bright future waiting for you. If you die like this, it's really a pity." Hearing Tai Hu's words, Shurhang's face darkened, but he had to answer. "Well, Marquis has fallen into your hands. Of course, I'll accept it. But who are you, and what are you doing here?" "I'm not afraid to tell you that we're the Langya Special Forces under the command of the Duke of Zhongdan. Our mission is to behead senior officials like you." Tai Hu reported his identity. "The Duke of Zhongdan. You're the Duke of Zhongdan's subordinates? I'm Marquis Wuqing, who was conferred by the Emperor of Baiming. Aren't you afraid of the law by treating me like this?" Aren't you afraid of being punished by the emperor in the future? After knowing the details of Tai Hu and others, Shi Hung pretended to be very angry and roared. He wanted to gain the initiative by striking first and oppressing people with reason, but Tai Hu didn't take him seriously at all. Well, if you want to live, you'd better not shout. We're just carrying out our mission. As for the punishment of the emperor, it has nothing to do with us. Haha, Taitu is right. Even if the emperor wants to punish us, he has to find us first. Ha ha ha. Skinny Monkey, who liked to bicker the most, laughed. His voice attracted the laughter of the other team members. This was like a scholar meeting a soldier. It was hard to reason with him. For the officials, the emperor was a great existence. But for the ordinary people, it was too far away. Especially for Tai Hu and others, they listened to Yang Qindong. As for the emperor of Biming, who was he? He couldn't reason with them, and he couldn't beat them. Shi Hung had to accept his fate and bow his head. He knew that if he wanted to live, he could only do as the other party asked. It's very simple. First, do two things. If you do them well, your life will be safe. Tai Hu saw that Shi Hung wanted to bow his head, so he immediately said, "What are the two things?" Shi Hung asked, "First, immediately order the army to stop and set up camp. Second, write a letter to your emperor. Tell him that the 5-star army is too strong and that you are not their match." Tai Hu told him the mission that Yang Qindong had given him. Shi Hung paused for a moment, then shook his head and said, "The army can stop. This is up to Marquis. But the matter of writing a memorial isn't that simple. We have a lot of soldiers, so there's no reason." "You want a reason? Don't worry, there will be one soon." "Yes, just wait for one night." Tai, who seemed to have expected Shi Hung to say something, so he spoke at a steady pace. The main tent was thus controlled by Tai, Hu, and the others. What was worth mentioning was that the news of Shi Hung being threatened didn't spread. Perhaps it was because Marquis cared too much about his face. The 8 soldiers were ordered not to spread the news, so the matter was covered up. The 200,000 soldiers were originally ordered to quickly head to Sanbuchuan City. However, the order suddenly changed, and they were told to stay where they were. Many of the generals couldn't understand. However, no one dared to disobey the military order. They could only find a place to stop. At the same time, the 100 Biming's newly built redcoat cannons also stopped. During the march, because these things were too heavy, they had been left behind. However, these things were very useful, so there were quite a few soldiers assigned to protect them. There were at least a few thousand people. It wasn't easy to kill their way through the heavy encirclement and get to the cannons. However, if they were to blow them up from afar, it would be much easier. Coincidentally, the order that Long Wu received was to blow up these things. Since it was a mission given by the 6th young master, He Gong, as the commander, had to carry it out himself. He selected over 100 elite soldiers from Long Wu and brought 4 rocket launchers to the Biming army's encampment. 2 of the elite soldiers first knocked out 2 Biming soldiers who were in charge of patrolling the night. After changing into their uniforms, they secretly placed a dozen or so bags of powerful explosives around the 100 redcoat cannons. Then, under He Gong's command, the 4 rocket launchers shot out flames and blasted the bags of explosives. Flames rose into the sky and engulfed the redcoat cannons. It was as if an earth dragon had been born. Shi Hung, who was resting on his desk, was shocked by the tremors. He sent out 2 soldiers to gather information. Soon, the news of all the redcoat cannons being blown up came back. At this point, Shi Hung finally understood what Tai Hu's reason was. Sigh. With a sigh, Shi Hung started to write a memorial to the Daizong Emperor. The general content was that because the cannons were destroyed, there were no more powerful siege weapons. Also, considering that the leader of the five-star army was the Duke of Loyal Ming. He didn't want to fight with them. Therefore, he asked the emperor to give the order to retreat. Ming capital, Imperial Palace. The war in the northwest grassland had always affected Daizong Zhu Qiyu's heart. When he heard that the 200,000 soldiers of Datong had been defeated, he cursed angrily. Then, when he heard that the Xuanfu army was also implicated and trapped in Sambuchuan City, he was so angry that he flipped over his desk. Fortunately, there was good news that Walla and Ili Kingdom were going to work together to attack the five-star army. He suddenly felt like he was going to sit back and watch a fierce battle between tigers and dragons. The news from the front lines was that the Walla alliance had 300,000 soldiers, and they were only going to deal with the 40,000 five-star army. At that time, Zhu Qiyu became worried. On the one hand, he hoped that the Walla alliance would succeed and eliminate Yang Qindong, eliminating his greatest threat. On the other hand, he didn't want the war to end too early. This was because once the Walla alliance became stronger, they would be a big threat to Ming. Just like that, more than a month passed. News came from the front lines again. It was actually the five-star army that won. Ili Kingdom was the first to return to their country, and then the Walla army was defeated. When this news came out, Zhu Qiyu sighed that Yang Qindong wasn't simple. At the same time, he also saw hope. That was to destroy the five-star army. While they were weakened, not only would they be able to take down many important cities, but they would also be able to solve the problem in their hearts. Sure, Heng set out with the army. Zhu Qiyu was always waiting for good news. Finally, the governor and Marquis Wu Qingho's memorial came. He hurriedly opened it and saw that the contents were completely different from what he had imagined. After about half a cup of tea's time, Zhu Qiyu suddenly stood up and kicked the new desk to the ground. Then he angrily shouted, "Trash! Trash! A bunch of trash!" This scene frightened the head eunuch Jining, who was serving at the side, so much so that she trembled with fear. It wasn't until he picked up Shi Heng's memorial from the ground that he understood why the emperor was so angry. Chapter 996. Shi Heng had blasted the troops before they had even set off. Then, he requested to negotiate with the five-star army. He also said that if they had to fight with the five-star army, now, even if they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. If the Walla army took the opportunity to attack, they would not be able to fight back. At that time, Ming would be in danger. Nearly 400,000 soldiers. They are only dealing with a few tens of thousands of exhausted five-star army. Yet they are still so timid. What do you think they are for? Zhu Qiyu condensed the anger in his heart into one sentence and asked Jining, who was standing beside him, "Your Majesty, should we send another general to replace Governor Shi?" Jining tried to suggest another method. "It's too late. It's too late. As long as the five-star army is given enough time to rest and reorganize, they will be able to recover quickly. If that's the case, it will be like what Shi Heng said. Even if we defeat the five-star army, it will be a Pyrrhic victory." Zhu Qiyu shook his head. Opportunities were often fleeting. Any waiting could cause them to miss the best opportunity. Now, the opportunity was about to pass. He did not want to fight to the death with the five-star army, just to defeat the five-star army, and not have complete confidence in killing Yang Qindong. "Your Majesty, what should we do next?" Jining saw that the battle could not start and asked for a solution. Zhu Qiyu did not answer immediately. Instead, he hesitated for a long time before he slowly said, "Summon Su Yozhen." Su Yozhen had reported to Zhu Qiyu what she had seen and heard after she returned from Shi City. She also said that Yang Qindong was very grateful and looked forward to being conferred the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon by the emperor. For this reason, Not only was he willing to provide nearly 200,000 Ming soldiers with provisions for free in Sambuchuan, he was also willing to invest 5 million to help Ming build a banking system. Zhu Qiyu, who wanted to be strong, could not refuse such a request. When it came to building a bank, he had already planned to do so. Back then, his predecessor, the current emperor of the southern Ming dynasty, Zhu Qizhen, also had the same idea. It was just that when he saw how powerful the Yang family's bank had become, he gave up on the idea of building his own bank. He thought that rather than building his own bank, he might as well take it for himself. Wouldn't that be better? However, reality was ever-changing. Not long after, the Tumu Rebellion occurred, and Zhu Qizhen was forced to go to the south to proclaim himself emperor. After Zhu Qiyu ascended to the throne, he thought more about gathering people's support and building a new army. As for the matter of establishing a bank, he pushed it back again and again because he was short on money. Now, Yang Qindong was willing to invest 5 million taels of silver to help him build a bank. How could he refuse such a good thing? At that time, Zhu Qiyu had wanted to agree, but she hesitated because of the changes in the war on the grassland. He still wanted to see what would happen. If Yang Qindong was eliminated, then this promise would naturally be useless. Now, when the overall situation was settled and the winner was the 5-star army, Zhu Qiyu had to reconsider the cooperation with Yang Qindong. It was still the same sentence. The highest level of politics was not fighting and killing, but how to achieve one's wish in mutual compromise. Although they had cooperated with the Walla coalition before, although they did not directly send troops, they had indirectly become the enemy of the 5-star army. But now, for the sake of common interests, everyone had to sit down and talk again. Su Yozhen was urgently summoned to the palace. The moment the eunuch went to deliver the decree, she knew what would happen next. Compared with the intelligence network of Ming, the Yang Xie Security Bureau was more efficient. Thanks to them, Su Yozhen even knew the truth better than Zhu Qiyu. For example, the news that Marquis Wukinghao Shiheng had been controlled. After a trip to the first city, Su Yozhen's originally wavering thoughts became very firm. That was, she completely stood on the side of Yang Qindong. The matter of turning the Duke of Zhongdang into the Bugnam of Gojoseon became her proof of allegiance and a big gift to her master. In the main hall of the palace, Zhu Qiyu asked about the 5 million taels of silver. The focus was on when the silver could be taken out. Replying to your majesty, the result of the discussion between the Duke of Zhongdang and I in the first city is that as long as your majesty announces to the world that he is the king, the people of the Yang family bank in the capital will send people to the location we have chosen to decorate. Once the decoration is successful, the 5 million taels of silver will be put into our own bank. Su Yozhen answered clearly again. In fact, she had reported this matter more than once. She believed that the emperor urgently summoned her not to hear this answer again. Zhu Qiyu nodded silently and did not speak immediately. After a while, he asked, "Can we carry out the decoration first? Minister Su, you also know that there are still a lot of preparations to be made for things like being crowned king. It is not something that can be done with an imperial decree." Yes, your majesty is right. I think the Duke of Zhongdang can also understand. Then everything will be done according to your majesty's wishes. Su Yozhen did not even hesitate to make a statement. Of course, others did not know that this was originally a problem that Yang Qindong had considered. In order to get the throne, he was willing to take the initiative to give in. Anyway, the silver had not entered the account, so he was not afraid of Dai Zong playing any tricks. Su Yozhen readily agreed, which made Zhu Qiyu's face reveal a very satisfied expression. He had already made the best decision for this matter. The so-called choosing a location and making preparations was just to get out of the situation. Only this could explain why Su Yozhen did not mention the imperial decree when she came back and only brought it up now. Minister Su, do you have any suggestions for the construction of the bank? Or what does Minister Su think about the management rights in this area? In a good mood, Zhu Qiyu asked another question, as if he wanted to discuss it with Su Yozhen. Su Yozhen, who was asked, showed a very surprised expression at this moment, and said, "Your Majesty, you must not." Su Yozhen's big reaction was greatly out of Zhu Qiyu's expectations. "Minister Su, what do you mean?" "Your Majesty, the bank can only be managed by Your Majesty. It is like the Yang family bank belongs to Yang Qindong alone. How can you allow others to interfere?" Su Yozhen said in a firm tone. When these words were said, Zhu Qiyu's expression changed. "Minister, Su means that the bank belongs to us. Of course it does. After all, this is a matter of wealth, and is something that everyone wants. Even if it is in the hands of others, they will not feel at ease. It is only proper for it to be managed by Your Majesty alone." Once again, she said in an incomparably firm tone. This also gave Zhu Qiyu incomparable confidence. Originally, he thought that it would be like the Ministry of Revenue managing the finances and should be handed over to someone else to manage it. Now that he heard Su Yozhen's words, it was as if he was enlightened and had a new idea in his mind. But then another question came. If the bank did not belong to the court and belonged to him, would other people have an opinion? Would they not deposit money in the bank because of this? If that was the case, the bank would exist in name only. Wouldn't it be a big joke? Although he was tempted by Su Yozhen's words after thinking about it, Zhu Qiyu could not help but say, "Minister Su's words are reasonable, but if it is like this, I'm afraid it will be too difficult to operate." Su Yozhen pretended to be serious and obedient, but at the same time, she could see the desire in Zhu Qiyu's eyes. She sneered in her heart and pretended to be distressed as she said, "Your Majesty, you are too considerate of your subject." Ha ha! No one disliked being flattered, and Zhu Qiyu was no exception. "But Your Majesty, forgive the subject for speaking bluntly, but you actually—" Su Yozhen did not have any intention of finishing her words. On the contrary, she revealed an expression of wanting to say something. Sensing that Su Yozhen had something to say, Zhu Qiyu said, "Minister Su, if you have something to say, just say it. We will pardon you." "Many thanks, Your Majesty. What this subject wants to say is that if you don't take the bank for yourself, it will be the same as harming Ming." Su Yozhen acted as if she had no other choice. When he said this, Jining, who had been standing to the side without speaking, immediately rebuked angrily, "Minister Su, how dare you?" "Wait, this is what we want Minister Su to say. Please continue." On the other hand, Zhu Qiyu gestured to Jining not to interrupt. Then he looked at Su Yozhen seriously. He really wanted to hear what this person had to say next, and how he was going to harm Ming. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your forgiveness. Since it is like this subject will speak bluntly," Su Yozhen said gratefully. "What we want to hear is Minister Su speak bluntly. Speak." Zhu Qiyu acted as if he knew how to accept people. "Yes." With a forced expression, Su Yozhen opened her mouth and said, "Your Majesty, you've always been very benevolent and considerate of your subjects. But do you know that if you give too much, not only will you not accept people's gratitude, it will instead be recognized as a habit? Over time, everyone will think that everything they are receiving now is deserved. Once the day comes when the court needs money and grain, how many people will take out their own money to support the court?" When these words were spoken, Zhu Qiyu immediately thought of when he had first established the new army. When he needed money, almost everyone was trying to shirk it. In the end, he had no choice but to continuously borrow money from Yang Qindong. The feeling of a high and mighty emperor borrowing money from his subjects was naturally very unpleasant. When he faced Yang Qindong, he always felt that he lacked confidence. Was it all because he was too good to his subjects? Thinking of this, he asked in confusion, "Are there really not many people in the court who are willing to work for us sincerely?" Chapter 9, 97. Yes, of course. If there are evil people, there are good people as well. Su Yozhen continued. At the same time, there are those who take everything for granted, and those who know how to be grateful. For example, those who believe that everything they have is given to them by your majesty, so they will be grateful. For example, the officials who have been promoted by your majesty, as well as Jin Gonggong and the others who have the fortune to serve by your majesty's side every day. We all know that everything we have was given to us by your majesty. To say something disrespectful, if there comes a day when your majesty is no longer here, everything we have will also be gone. For this reason, we are willing to give everything to you. No matter what decision you make, we will support you unconditionally and do as you say. Because in a sense, when we help the emperor, we are thinking about our own future. When these words were said, the first to react was Jining, who was standing beside Zhu Qiyu. As eunuchs, because of their own limitations, they could only rely on and had to rely on the emperor. As long as they received the emperor's approval, their future paths would be smooth and their work would be smooth. For example, they were a group of parasites that lived on the main body. If they wanted to live comfortably, they needed the main body to be strong enough. It was precisely because she understood these principles that when Su Yozhen said these words, Jining felt the same way and revealed a grateful expression. This was equivalent to Su Yozhen reminding the emperor that he was a trustworthy person. Of course, he had to make friends with a minister who was willing to speak up for him. Zhu Qiyu did not feel the same way as Jining, but she also knew that there was some truth in these words. Just as it was often said in the history books, a new emperor had a new court of officials. Many times, the relationship between the officials and the emperor was a cooperative one. Of course, there were those who cooperated and those who did not. For example, some people were good at creating their own net. No matter what happened above them, they would stand firm and not fall. This kind of person was the scariest and most hateful because they would not truly give their heart to any master. While Zhu Qiyu was still considering the deeper meaning of these words, Jining knew that it was time for her to make her first cut. She knelt down and said, "Emperor, Minister Su's words are from the bottom of his heart. There are indeed many people in the court with weak wills. Those people cannot be trusted." Jin Ying's words completely dispelled the misgivings in Zhu Qiyu's heart. He had thought through everything. When he looked at Su Yozhen, his face was full of emotion. "Official Su is indeed my right-hand man. What you said hit the nail on the head." I don't dare. Su Yozhen repeatedly declined. Then in Minister Su's opinion, this bank must be in our hands? If that's the case, is there anyone who has money in it? Zhu Qiyu asked the biggest question in his heart, which was also the thing he was most worried about. It wasn't just Zhu Qiyu. Jining, who was kneeling on the ground, also raised her head to look at Su Yozhen. In his opinion, there were a lot of stubborn people in the imperial court, and there were also a lot of people who only thought about themselves. If the bank was privately owned by the emperor, they would definitely think of ways to cause trouble. Not only would they not deposit money, but they would also probably tell others not to deposit money. If that was the case, wouldn't there be no meaning in having a bank without money? Su Yozhen, who had long been prepared for this, did not change his expression. His voice was still sonorous and powerful. "Emperor, this is not difficult to solve. Just as I said earlier, Your Majesty is always thinking of your officials. But how many officials truly think of your Majesty? I think that the establishment of this bank can be used as the best way to test the waters. How do you plan to test it? Zhu Qiyu asked urgently. Your Majesty, in this official's humble opinion, in the future, the officials can go to the bank to claim their salaries. In order to support the bank, which is to support Ming, all the officials must hand over 50% of their salaries to the bank each month as deposits. Once the northern Ming dynasty unified the world, all of the silver that had been deposited could be withdrawn. This way, not only will there be more money in the bank, it will also affect their own interests. This way, they won't have to worry about not doing their best in the future. Not only the officials, but also the merchants in Ming. The bigger the business, the more money they save. It can also be called a deposit. This is to prevent them from doing anything that would harm Ming's interests. Once discovered, the deposits will be confiscated. This way, in order to get back their own money, they must fully cooperate with the emperor. When that time comes, the hearts of the world will be united. What can't they do? With these generous words, Su Yozhen finally touched on Zhu Qiyu's sore spot. He said, in this official's opinion, the bank can be named the Zhu Family Bank. In the future, it will be passed down from generation to generation. At that time, Your Majesty's wise actions will be passed down for generations to come. The Zhu Family Bank will be passed down for generations to come, and its glory will be passed down for generations to come. Zhu Qiyu silently recited in his heart. Then he raised his right fist high and slammed it down. He shouted, "Good, beloved official Su's words are to my liking. It is a good plan for stabilizing the country. Great talent, great talent. Yes, Minister Su is so considerate of Your Majesty. You should be rewarded." To the side, Jining began to add on. He had a feeling that once the emperor approved the establishment of the Zhu Family Bank, it was very likely that this job would eventually land on his head. In that case, his power would greatly increase. All of this was Su Yozhen's suggestion. In order to return the favor, he had to stand up and say something for the other party. When Jin Ying's praise came out, Zhu Qiyu also felt that it was reasonable. Good, good. Beloved official Su is indeed a good official. Since that is the case, I will immediately decree that beloved official Su will be the Crown Prince's junior tutor, as well as a grand scholar and the Minister of Justice. This was a second-rank official, directly promoted from a second-rank official to a first-rank official. When he had first mentioned these suggestions in the first city, Yang Qindong had predicted that Su Yozhen would be promoted because of this. He had not thought that there would be results so quickly. As expected, he was promoted by a rank. After the great Ming dynasty was divided into north and south, there was no longer a cabinet. The highest civil official was second-rank official. Su Yozhen stood out and became the second-rank official. He immediately knelt down to express his gratitude. "Ha ha, beloved official Su, please rise." The suggestion just now was very good. However, regarding the official's salary, I think the bank should only withhold 30%. They are also working for me, so I have to be considerate of them. Zhu Qiyu said in a very good mood, "Your Majesty sympathizes with your officials. This is the good fortune of your officials. Here, I thank Your Majesty on behalf of all the officials." Su Yozhen once again knelt on the ground with an appearance of being sincerely convinced. These words made Zhu Qiyu laugh heartily. Soon after, the three of them decided on the matter of the Zhu family's bank. In the end, Zhu Qiyu indeed handed the matter over to Jining to handle. He also clearly said that if any of the officials caused trouble because of this matter and did not cooperate, then find a reason to arrest them. This was clearly not supporting his great cause. He even had to make thoughtless remarks about deducting some money. Did he expect them to be willing to risk their lives at the crucial moment? The matter was settled just like that. Su Yozhen successfully completed the task Yang Qindong gave him and pushed Baiming's political power to the edge of the cliff. Speaking of which, the official salary in the Ming dynasty was not high, especially in the beginning during Emperor Taizu's time. Even after experiencing the rule of Ren Xuanji, although the salary had increased to a certain extent, it was only 30% every month. Now, this 30% had been completely taken by Zhu Qiyu. In other words, for ordinary officials, it would be difficult for them to save up any more. This involved their own problems, so naturally many people would stand up and react. If they could not obtain a solution and had to use force to forcefully suppress it, it would only lead to greater resistance and dissatisfaction. Once the people were dissatisfied, the giant Baiming was not far from collapsing. This was Yang Qindong's move to use a peaceful method to solve the Ming dynasty's problem. Now, it seemed that Zhu Qiyu had already fallen for it. Perhaps it would take a certain amount of time, or a very long time for it to take effect. But after all, the first step had already been taken, right? Su Yozhen left. He did not return to his residence. Instead, he went directly to the Yang family bank in the capital to explain the Baiming emperor's intentions. Soon, the location of the Zhu family bank and the establishment of the corresponding equipment were on the right track. Next, they had to consider the important matter of issuing an imperial edict for Yang Qindong to be Bugnam of Gojoseon. On the grassland, all the reports from Su Yozhen came from the Security Bureau. Yang Qindong was overjoyed. The matter was settled. The next thing was to settle the grassland matter. It was already the 10th month of 1455 AD. The weather began to cool down in the morning and evening. After the war, the grassland was about to enter a relatively peaceful period of development. The 100,000 people sent by Qiqian City arrived at Shajing City and Jingzhou City one after another, greatly increasing the population of the city. At the same time, the expansion of the city also sped up with the arrival of the 100,000 people. In this way, with Maobei City in the northwest and Shajing City and Jingzhou City in the south, the origin city would be safer as the center. They could also expand the scale of the original cultivated land. This time, Yang Qindong asked for at least a total of 1 million hectares of fertile land to achieve self-sufficiency. At the same time, it could also support the Third Master Lu and other troops going to the grassland of northern Siberia. Building a city was not only about possession and existence. How to develop it and let the people live a more prosperous life was Yang Qindong's ultimate goal. He firmly believed that as long as the lives of the people were better, a country would become more stable and powerful. In order to protect the fruits of their hard-won victory, more people would be willing to do more for the power or the country. Chapter 998. Solving the problem of food, clothing, and housing was something that needed to be solved urgently and had to be solved. For these, Yang Qindong personally put forward various proposals and experiences. With the full support of the first city, the two cities of Shajing and Jingzhou were constantly changing. It was far from enough for a city to merely have high walls. It also required the existence of a powerful army. Only then would it be able to form an effective deterrent force, and only then would it be able to avoid being invaded and targeted by others. After Yang Qindong thought about it, he handed over the matter of guarding the two cities to the new Second Army. In the battle with Walla, the new Second Army performed well. Although it was not as strong as the new First Army, it was at least much stronger than the Maobei Division and the Maobei Tribal Alliance that had lost their defensive line. Therefore, Yang Qindong was relieved to hand over the security of the south side of the first city to the new Second Army. The army surrounding Sambulachuan city had not yet withdrawn, but the corresponding commanding officers had already arrived at Shajing City and held a meeting in the newly built Yang Mansion here. At the meeting, Yang Chendong personally awarded the Major General Gold Star to the commander of the new Second Army, Tian, who, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, which attracted everyone's congratulations and applause. Listening to the congratulatory applause and looking at the field officers who attended the meeting, Yang Chendong reached out his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. Then he encouraged, comforted, and at the same time said in a cheering tone, "Today, Shibi and Tian, who were promoted to Major General, but there will be more generals in the future. In the future, we will form a new army, the new 4th Army, or even more. As long as you have the strength and ability, then don't be afraid of not having a chance to show off." In the first city defense battle, Yang Chendong saw his own shortcomings. That was, when facing a strong enemy, the soldiers in his hands were still too few. It could be said that his foundation was too weak. It had only been a few years, and he pursued the path of elite soldiers. As the first city had completely gained a firm foothold on the grassland, Yang Chendong's requirements for the elite cavalry were also constantly increasing. From a small number of elite cavalry to a large number of elite cavalry. After the meeting, Yang Chendong stayed behind and talked about the situation on the grassland. "The Ming army won't be able to surround us for too long. Young master, I might have to leave this place for a while. Do you know what to do?" In the face of this interview, Sherbet nodded heavily and said, "Sixth young master, thank you for handing such a heavy responsibility to me. I will not let you down. I have also considered the following matters. There are 3 main points that I would like to ask the 6th young master to correct. Tell me about it." Seeing that he was prepared, Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction. The reason why he promoted this person's position so quickly was that he had a good view of the overall situation. Now it seemed that he did not disappoint him along the way. Sherbet began to express his opinions. The first point was to stabilize Shajing City and Jingzhou City and build them here at the same time. Not only would they become the southern barrier of the first city, but they would also become the new base of the 5-star army. Once they attacked from the south, it would become the most solid defense. The second point was how to have a good relationship with the Ming army. It was neither too far nor too close. They would not make a move, but they would also make the other party afraid. The third point was to develop commerce and handicraft industry. Sherbet mentioned that he had seen some weaving factories built in the first city. He thought that it was possible to move some of them to Shajing City and continue to develop. At the same time, he could also use the natural advantages here to raise a large number of horses and sheep. In short, he wanted to be self-sufficient as soon as possible. Very good. After listening to Sherbet's speech, Yang Chendong gave him a lot of encouragement and then said, "This time, I will move the people of the 2 cities to the first city and Mabe City." At that time, the total of 100,000 people in the 2 cities will be completely trustworthy. They will be very obedient. This will be more conducive for you to carry out your plan. I hope that the next time I come, I can see a different appearance of the 2 cities. Is there any problem? I promise to complete the task. Sherbet took the initiative to stand up and answer. Very good. Then you can do things according to the plan in your heart. If you need anything, your old superior, the new Army Commander Tiger's Mane, the Logistics Division Commander Yang Si, and the Lord of the First City, Yu Mian, will do their best to support you. Yang Chendong patted Sherbet's shoulder and gave him high hopes. After Sherbet left, Tiger's Mane walked into the main tent and sat opposite Yang Chendong. In the face of this page boy who had followed him for many years, Yang Chendong had always given him a lot of trust. Many important things would be handed over to this person to do. This time was no exception. He handed over the preparation of the new army to him. Tiger's Mane, when choosing an army, you have to choose a general first. It is very important to choose the commander of the new army. Without any pleasantries, Yang Qindong went straight to the point. Young master, what do you think of Suhi? Tiger's Mane also came prepared. He knew that the reason why the first city defense battle was fought this time, including the young master sending the Wolf Fang special forces to hold Shiheng, was all because of the lack of military strength. He was also prepared to support the expansion of the army. Now that he was asked, he named the Tatar division commander Suhi. Tiger's Mane's answer made Yang Qindong very happy. In terms of the combat power of the new army, the Tatar division played a very important role. As the commander, Tiger's Mane could not be unaware of this. However, he still resolutely pushed the main general out. From this point alone, he already had a view of the overall situation and was mature. Good, Tiger's Mane, you have finally grown up. Young master can also rest assured. That's it. Suhi will be the temporary commander of the new army. You can tell him that when the new army is completed and has enough combat power, I will personally confer the rank of Major General to him. Well, after this battle, the new Second Army and the new First Army also suffered a lot of losses. We can consider replenishing them. As for the new army, after the Tatar division is gone, they can join other divisions. In short, their combat power cannot be weakened. Young master, I will see all of this when I come to the grassland next time. Young master, please rest assured. Tiger's Mane's gaze was firm, and his voice was strong as he replied. In the battle with the Walla, the 5-star army suffered a lot of losses, especially the cavalry charge under the heavy rain, which increased the difficulty of the charge. When the whole body was wet, every swing of the sword had to use more strength than usual, which increased the difficulty of the battle. Naturally, the losses in this battle were greater than usual. Fortunately, there were many captives. In the future, after these people were reformed and joined the 5-star army, they would be a strong force. During this period of time, Yang Qindong continuously met with his officers to encourage them. He gave them high positions, but at the same time, he also gave them a lot of pressure. In short, the cavalry had to continue to develop, and he wanted to see these officers perform well. He hoped that, in the future, they could become real generals like Shi Bei and Tian Hu. Time passed day by day. The side besieging the city did not move, and the side being besieged also did not move. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something. Half a month later, there was finally news. The acting emperor of Ming, Zhu Qiyu, announced to the world that in view of Yang Qindong's loyalty and bravery, and this time, together with the Ming army, he had chased away the allied cavalry of the Walla and Ili. His contributions were great, and he was bestowed with the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon, and his name was announced to the world. When the imperial edict came out, the entire imperial court of Ming had all kinds of opinions. Some old officials who had retired for many years came out like bamboo shoots after the rain. Some directly wrote a letter, and some joined together to request to see the emperor. In short, there was only one sentence. The Duke of Loyal and Courageous had a heretical heart, and he could not be bestowed with the title of king at will. Not only that, some of the princes of the various regions of the Zhu clan also wrote memorials. The general idea was that the emperor had to be careful when bestowing the title of king with a different surname. They had to prevent the emperor from being deceived by petty people. The Duke of Loyal and Courageous territory was already very large. If he was given a proper title, how would he be restrained in the future? The memorials in front of Zhu Qiyu quickly piled up like a mountain. The reaction from below was giving him a headache. To the side, Jining saw that the emperor was distressed and suggested that they invite Su Yozhen, the scholar Su, to come and see if he had any countermeasures. Ever since Su Yozhen had said that the establishment of the bank would belong to the emperor alone, and Jining had been given this cushy job, the two of them had quickly warmed up. Now that there was an opportunity, he naturally had to lead the way for his good friend. Su Yozhen, who was now the crown prince's junior tutor and scholar and a first-rank official of the court, quickly arrived at the imperial palace. After saluting, Su Yozhen was asked how to deal with the current situation. Su Yozhen asked with a confident look, "Your Majesty, this subject dares to ask, in these memorials, in addition to objecting to Duke Zhongdan's coronation, are there also memorials to impeach this subject? Beloved official, there is no need to pay attention to this. Zhen knows what to do." In order to comfort Su Yozhen, Zhu Qiyu purposely put on an expression of complete trust in him, and that there was no need for him to worry. This proved that there was. Su Yozhen understood, and immediately said, "Your Majesty, this subject believes that this is a very normal matter. At the end of the day, the root cause of these actions is only one word: jealousy." Jealousy? Zhu Qiyu didn't quite understand. Yes, jealousy. They are jealous that this subject has become the crown prince's junior tutor and scholar, so they are impeaching this subject. At the same time, they are jealous that the Duke of Loyal and Courageous being bestowed the title of king, so they are also impeaching him. Speaking of which, it is just the thoughts of petty people. It is not worth paying attention to. You are the emperor. You are the favored son of the heavens. When something happens, your words carry enormous weight. Why do you need to act according to other people's wishes? In the end, this country is still yours. It is up to the emperor to decide who to promote and who to use. Speaking of which, the country needs money. Why don't we see them jumping out to give their opinions? This kind of person who only knows how to be jealous of others is useless at crucial times. They only know how to argue and use their pen. It is not worth your Majesty paying attention to their opinions. Chapter 999. Su Yozhen had publicly slandered a colleague. If word of this got out, it would be difficult for him to maintain a foothold in the court. However, he still said it. He was certain that neither Zhu Qiyu nor Jining would say it out loud. From a certain perspective, they were already in the same boat. They were bound together for good or ill. These words caused Zhu Qiyu to fall silent. Of course, he knew that some of the court officials were full of self-awareness. If it were a prosperous time, they might have some knowledge of how to govern the country. However, when the country was in danger, it was already good enough that these people didn't cause trouble. These people didn't deserve his attention. However, there were so many memorials here. He couldn't just ignore them. Now, he didn't even dare to go to court. As soon as he went to court, he would be met with the objections of his subordinates. It was a headache. Zhu Qiyu didn't say anything. Su Yozhen's eyes turned, and he said again, "Your Majesty, there is a better way to divert everyone's attention. I guarantee that no one will mention this matter in the future." Oh, I knew that Minister Su would have a way. Quickly say it. Zhu Qiyu had been waiting for this result. He immediately asked with a face full of joy, "Yes, I believe that it is time to announce the establishment of the Zhu family bank and the matter of the salary being deducted to the world." What? Zhu Qiyu's face was filled with shock when he heard this. Then he shook his head violently and said, "The coronation has already caused so much chaos. If the matter of the bank is also revealed, won't it be even more chaotic?" It won't. In order to strengthen Zhu Qiyu's heart, Su Yozhen took the initiative to say, "Your Majesty, instead of doing all that you can to suppress the side effects of the coronation, you shouldn't reveal the matter of the bank. Let's see how they deal with it. When the time comes, your Majesty will use all your power as the Son of Heaven to suppress it. Everything will be fine. Su Yozhen's intention was quite obvious. Since there was going to be chaos, it was better to release all the things that were going to be chaotic. In this way, the first chaos would still be chaos, and the second chaos would still be chaos. It was better than solving things one by one. Your Majesty, Lord Su's words are reasonable. Jining saw an opportunity and spoke up to encourage him. This was actually what he wanted to say. Jining naturally did not care about the chaos caused by Yang Qindong's coronation. If it was possible, he would have opposed being crowned king. However, if he did not give the throne, the 5 million taels of silver would be in his hands. Helpless, he could only take a step back. Now that the matter was in chaos, it was unknown how long it would take for the bank to be built. How could he reap any benefits from it? In short, Jin Ying's idea was that the earlier the bank was established, the earlier he could make money. As for whether it was chaotic or not, what did that have to do with him? After Jin Ying added, Su Yozhen spoke for the third time. Your Majesty, the matter of the bank is related to the foundation of the country. The earlier it is established, the earlier we can make money. We can also solve my Ming problem earlier. Your Majesty, this subject wants to see the day when the Northern, Southern, and Great Ming are united. This subject sincerely hopes that this day will come soon. As he spoke, Su Yozhen knelt on the ground with a thump. His eyes seemed to be filled with tears. At this moment, he perfectly portrayed the side of a loyal subject. Just now, Zhu Qiyu was already somewhat moved. Now that he heard about unifying the Great Ming as soon as possible, the blood in his heart was instantly stirred. How could he care so much? He immediately said, "Beloved official Su's heart is comforted. Since this is the case, Jining, has the matter of the bank been prepared?" Your Majesty, it has been prepared. We only need to wait for the silver to arrive before we can open for business. Your Majesty, this subject will go to the Yang family bank after leaving the palace and personally escort the 5 million taels of silver to the Zhu family bank. Oh, right, Eunuch Jin, I will need you to send the embroidered uniform guards along the way. Su Yozhen struck while the iron was hot. Well said, well said. Please do not worry, official Su. Jin Ying's face immediately bloomed with joy. When Zhu Qiyu heard their one-on-one conversation, it was as if the matter had already been settled. He knew that he had to make a decision. He immediately said, "Since this is the case, we will announce this matter at the morning court tomorrow." Humph, we would like to see who will oppose this, and how many of them are loyal to us. Your Majesty is wise. Su Yozhen and Jining immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, "Long live the Emperor!" Su Yozhen's appearance caused the spearhead that should have been directed at Yang Qindong to be directed at the Zhu family bank. When all the officials found out that in the future, 30% of their monthly salary would be deposited in the Zhu family bank and would only be taken out when Ming unified the world, there was an immediate uproar. Yang Qindong was conferred the title of Wu Nanwang, and most of them were jealous of him. But they couldn't rule out the possibility that some of the officials were worried that Yang Qindong's influence would grow too big and would eventually destroy the Great Ming's rivers and mountains. Then where would they go? Only then did they submit memorials to the emperor one by one. It was as if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be able to show that they were loyal officials. However, the Zhu family bank was directly related to their interests. This time, there was no need for others to remind them, who knew how many people took the initiative to submit memorials to the emperor, directly pointing out the various undesirable aspects of the Zhu family bank. Moreover, the establishment of the Zhu family bank also involved merchant groups. In the future, when doing business, they would need to place a deposit. Moreover, the larger the business, the higher the deposit would be. This poked at these people's sore spot. They quickly took action. It was said that officials and merchants were inseparable. It was the same regardless of era. Under the instigation of these merchants, even more officials stood up and bitterly pointed out the various faults of the Zhu family bank. Ming's court thus became a pot of porridge. It was likely that it would take several months for the situation to settle down. In contrast, the situation in the grasslands became much more harmonious. When the imperial edict of the Duke of Loyalty being promoted to Bugnam of Gojoseon arrived, Taihu and the others left Shi Heng's main tent with smiles on their faces. "Marquis, do you want us to chase after them and take them down?" Shi Heng was finally safe. The personal guards beside him also jumped out to show their loyalty. Take what? They've already left. Besides, their master is now Bugnam of Gojoseon. How could it be so easy to provoke him? Shi Heng shook his head. Then he thought of something important and said, "Quick, send someone to Sanbuchuan to take a look. See if the 5-star army has already retreated." The scouts were sent out, and the news quickly came back. As expected, the 5-star army had already retreated. The Xuanfu soldiers were no longer trapped and were already safe. Upon hearing this news, Shi Heng immediately wrote a memorial. The general idea was that through his unremitting efforts, the danger of Sanbuchuan had been resolved. He was already prepared to bring the army back to the capital. This trip to Shi Heng could be said to be full of twists and turns. First, he waited for news near Jiong Pass. Then, he was threatened the moment he left Tulu. From start to finish, he didn't even see the shadow of a single friendly army, but the mission could be considered completed. Of the 200,000 soldiers, only 100 red-coat cannons had been damaged and blown up. There were almost no casualties. They could be considered to have returned without a hitch. In Shajing City, the news that Yang Qindong had been conferred the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon had spread, eliciting a burst of cheers from the soldiers and common people. Other than a few people in the know, the majority of the people didn't know how this trick had happened. How had their 6th young master become a prince of a different surname, personally conferred by the emperor of the great Ming dynasty? Although they couldn't figure it out, this was still a good thing, worthy of everyone's celebration. In Shajing City, after sending away group after group of subordinates who had come to congratulate him, Yang Qindong knew that it was time to leave the grassland. This trip had been more than a year, and his daughter Lele probably didn't remember him. In addition, the winter in the grassland was very cold. In contrast, the weather in Qiqian City was warm and pleasant. After leaving Shajing City and leaving everything here to the commander of the new 2nd Army, Yang Qindong brought Tiger's Mane and the others back to the first city, where he picked up the 6th Madame Wan Xiaoyu. Then he left the first city with Beta Persei and 1,000 Longwei and the main force of the 5th Sea Division, and went straight to the Korean province from the Liaodu area. In December 1455, Yang Qindong and his party returned to Qiqian City by ship. Qiqian City Palace. Yang Qindong, who had returned, was covered in dust. He rode the white dragon and went straight to the inner palace. Along the way, everyone he saw knelt on the ground and said, "Long live the king." He acted as if he didn't see all this. His heart was only thinking about his daughter Lele. He hadn't seen her for more than a year, and he missed her very much. In a courtyard in the depths of the palace, Lele, who was already 1 year and 5 months old, could already walk. He hobbled around with his chubby little face and his big eyes blinking, as if everything he saw was new to him. Her mother, Qiao Yin, surrounded Lele with a group of maids, watching her every move. From time to time, they would laugh at her somewhat childish actions. But at some point, the small courtyard suddenly quieted down. The sudden appearance of a man attracted everyone's attention. As if feeling that the atmosphere was not right, little Lele, who was walking happily, also looked back and saw an unfamiliar man wearing a golden battle armor. Seeing such a tall stranger suddenly appear, Lele instinctively cried. She seemed to be frightened and also seemed to be affected by Yang Qindong's murderous aura. Wah! In the quiet atmosphere, this cry immediately tugged at everyone's heartstrings. Immediately, a few maids ran to Lele's side. However, no matter how fast they were, they couldn't be faster than Yang Qindong, who was running with big strides. He hugged Lele the moment he reached out, and then the inner qi in his dantian kept surging. Yang Qindong jumped 4 feet, high continuously. This height made Lele feel like she was riding on clouds. Her eyes that were originally filled with tears suddenly stopped moving. She first held her breath and concentrated, as if she was very afraid. But soon, she got used to the rhythm. She actually followed the baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, shouting, "Hi, hi, hi." After jumping continuously for a while, Yang Qindong felt a little tired, so he stopped. Then he hugged Lele and said, "Come, Lele, call me father." After suddenly stopping and being stared at by Yang Qindong, Lele, who couldn't get used to it, started crying again. Her voice was strong and didn't sound like a girl at all. Chapter 1000. Xiao Yin finally walked over from afar. She looked at Yang Qindong with a gentle gaze, but when she saw Lele crying, she couldn't help but take the child into her arms. "Young master, Lele is still young. She hasn't seen you for so long. I'm afraid she has already forgotten about you." "Has she forgotten? I'm also her father," Yang Qindong said nonchalantly, then made a face at Lele, who was in her mother's arms. Lele, who was originally in her mother's embrace, suddenly felt a sense of security. She then began to curiously size up this strange man who was playing with her. When she saw him make a funny face at her, she immediately forgot about what had just happened and laughed out loud. This was probably a blood relationship. After all, they were father and daughter. Even if they were unfamiliar for a moment, they would quickly become familiar with each other again. Yang Qindong returned, and he returned to Crimson City as Bugnam of Gojoseon. Immediately, a few high-ranking officials came to greet Yang Qindong and reported on their work in the past year. In the past year, Crimson City's development was delightful. In particular, the first batch of Crimson City Academy students had graduated from the 6-year program. Most of them were talented and intelligent adults. They also had a certain degree of cultural background, so they learned things relatively quickly. Some of them had also achieved a certain degree of success in the fields of mathematics, physics, chemistry, and other fields. For example, the success of the 95 style was closely related to the participation of some students. Following the graduation of the first batch of 100 students, various units and departments were scrambling to recruit them as if they were looking forward to the stars and the moon. These were all Yang Xie's new students. They could be considered as one of Yang Qindong's disciples. They had a lot of knowledge that was different from this era. Once they were recruited into their departments, the benefits were far beyond imagination. Not only did the first batch of students graduate from the 6-year program, but there were also 600,000 ordinary people who learned some Chinese characters. Most of them had more or less learned some skills, so there was no problem for them to be self-reliant. Most importantly, they were grateful to Yang Qindong because they were the people who were sold to Yang Xie by the Southern Ming Empire. Back then, they were all skinny, and skinny not much different from people who were about to die. But now, their faces were rosy and they had skills. They were existences that could be moved to different places at any time and be used as a main force. In the eyes of many people, the expansion of Yang faction's forces was already very fast, but in fact, it could be even faster. The main reason was that Yang Qindong's forces were occupying land and cities, but they couldn't win the hearts of the people. This kind of occupation was meaningless, so Yang Qindong slowed down. Now that he had 600,000 loyal Han citizens, it was enough for him to conquer a large area. Good news came one after another. The many years of hard work in Crimson City were finally paying off. It also meant that Yang Xie's forces could reach a new level in the future. After returning to Crimson City, other than meeting all kinds of people and going to the various factories and units to give his opinions, Yang Qindong spent most of his time in the palace playing with his daughter Lei and working hard at night. There was no other way. Yang Qindong's love for Lei exceeded everyone else's love. Every night, as long as he had time, he would personally coax his daughter to sleep and patiently tell her stories before going to accompany the other madams. This made the madams who originally thought that he did not like children understand that it was not that their husband did not like children, but that he did not have any of his own. Since their husband liked children so much, what were they waiting for? Making use of the time that Yang Qindong spent in Crimson City to celebrate the new year, he was exhausted every night. Fortunately, he never stopped exercising, so his body could still take it. In the blink of an eye, year 1456 arrived. The new year was naturally celebrated in Crimson City's palace. This was also his first new year after becoming the Southern Martial King, so it was naturally very lively. Compared to the liveliness in Crimson City, Southern Ming King Zhu Huidong's days were getting harder and harder. After a year of bitter fighting, he, who did not have any foundation, was gradually losing under the pincer attack of Southern Ming King Zhu Qizhen and Sheeping King Mu Bin. He had already lost a quarter of his territory. Even so, his forces were still shrinking. If not for the support of the Miao people, he would not have been able to hold on. But even so, with his defeat, without external help, it was only a matter of time before he lost this war. Southern Ming-Ing's sex, Zhu Qizhen, had a good new year. When all the food was bought by the five-star army at a fair price, the pressure on him decreased a lot. The soldiers did not need to continue farming and only needed to train and wait for the battlefield. This indirectly increased the strength of the army, allowing them to win against Southern Ming King's army. However, Zhu Qizhen neglected one thing. Although the army did not have to worry about food, what about the commoners? For many commoners, farming was the only thing they could do and knew how to do. But now, the country did not care about farming at all. They did not give any help, but the taxes they collected were not low at all. Other than a few landlords who still had a lot of land, the commoners who only had a few plots of land could not survive. In order to survive, they had no choice but to look for other ways to survive. The five-star army shelter near Langshan became a place where many people went to. The Langshan shelter was specially built by Yang Qindong to take in the Han people who had no home to return to and had nowhere to live. There was enough food and carriages there. As long as the Han people escaped there, they would be able to eat their fill and wear warm clothes. At the same time, the five-star army soldiers stationed there would ensure their safety. It was also said that after coming here, they would be quickly taken away. As long as they performed well, they would be given a large plot of land and live a rich life. As more and more Han people appeared in Crimson City and even secretly entered the Southern Ming Kingdom, their influence grew. In just a year, the number of citizens in the Southern Ming Kingdom had decreased by more than 1 million. However, because the Southern Ming Kingdom had tens of millions of people, and most of the people who escaped were the lowest class people who had nowhere to go, it did not attract much attention. Increase our efforts and send people to send large amounts of food to the shelter. In short, As long as there is still a breath left, we must save all the Han people and give them a new life. In the Crimson City Lord's mansion, Yang Qindong and Yu Qian sat opposite each other. When they talked about the southern Ming kingdom, King Nenwu spoke with an unquestionable tone. Regarding Yang Qindong's compassion and love for the people, Yu Qian naturally agreed. However, when he thought about the voices of opposition, he could not help but say, King Nenwu, if we do this, we will have to pay a lot more money and food. Some people say that it is not worth it to exchange for some illiterate people. *T. Yang Qindong directly refuted this statement. The people being illiterate is not their choice. It is the system and environment. How many of the Crimson City people were literate in the past? Since they can learn, why can't others learn? City Lord Yu, if anyone says such words in the future, tell them to talk to me directly. I want to see how many heads they have. Yang Qindong rarely spoke in a reprimanding tone. It could be seen that the position of the Han people in his heart was very high. Such a decision made Yu Qian very happy. He was originally an exception in the Great Ming dynasty's officialdom. He was also a person who spoke for the people. Now, there was someone who not only had the same thoughts as him, but also had the qualifications to keep his word. How could he not be happy? However, at the same time, he had a kind of concern. What was the point of having so many Han people, the entire Crimson City, and even the entire Ryukyu Island had been developed in the past few years? If there were more people, there would really be no land to plant. Bugnam of Gojoseon, based on the current situation of Ryukyu Island, there is no need for too many people. Even if some factories still need people, the number needed is limited. The arrival of these people will only increase our burden. As he spoke of the worries in his heart, Yu Qian stared at Yang Qindong. He wanted to see his trump card. This would be a great comfort for him when he did things in the future. To others, Yang Qindong only expressed goodwill towards the Han people, but did not completely expose his ambitions. However, to Yu Qian, a person who was truly loyal to the Han, Yang Qindong did not have any intention of hiding. Firstly, he knew that Yu Qian was tight-lipped. Secondly, his own ideals did not conflict with Yu Qian's, so he would be supported. Thirdly, as the city lord of Crimson City, in fact, Yang Xie was the highest official in charge of the place. He also needed to know his own thoughts. Thus, in front of outsiders, Yang Qindong expressed his own ideals for the first time. City Lord Yu, Crimson City does not need so many Han people, but other places do. For true Han people, we will only think that there are too few, not too many. Bugnam of Gojoseon's meaning is... Yu Qian seemed to understand, but it also seemed like he did not completely understand. The meaning is very simple. Our Yang Xie's territory will not be limited to what is in front of you. You can see the land around Great Ming, but there are many places that you cannot see. For example, the Western world where Portugal and Spain are located will be like Laos in the future, becoming our territory. Speaking of this, Yang Qindong's eyes were filled with a trace of hope and passion. As the city lord of Crimson City, developing businesses was also within his jurisdiction. Naturally, Yu Qian was not unfamiliar with Portugal, Spain, and the other Western countries. From what he knew, that place was also very vast. It was just that it was too far away, and he had to cross the sea, so he did not pay too much attention to it. What he did not expect was that Yang Qindong had actually set his sights on that place. Just how ambitious was that? For a moment, Yu Qian was truly shocked. Chapter 1001. As far as he knew, the strongest force in history was the Mongol cavalry led by Genghis Khan. Not only did they occupy most of the areas around the Central Plains, they even went as far as Eastern Europe, which was the present-day Austria, Hungary, Vienna, and the vicinity of the Danube. That was already so shocking that even now, many places were still ruled by their descendants and remnant forces. But now, Yang Qindong's reason seemed to be even more far-sighted. He actually wanted to attack across the sea. Wasn't this the rhythm of conquering the entire world? Yu Qian did not know that the Bugnam of Gojoseon in his eyes was from the future. He had seen too many scenes of Han people being discriminated against and seen too much injustice. He had even seen countless provocations, but what he could do back then was limited. Now that he finally had the chance to change everything, no matter how hard he worked, it was all worth it. He wanted to see the moment when the Han people stood at the peak of the world. He wanted the blood of the Han people to always be the noblest and purest. He wanted to see that no matter where the Han people represented the most powerful and inviolable, there was no blasphemy. For this dream, he was willing to give up everything, including his life. Yang Qindong's showdown made Yu Qian admire him. And at the same time, he also gained more confidence. Bugnam of Gojoseon, don't worry. This old subject knows what to do. In the future, I will accept as many Han people as there are. If there is any pressure, this old subject will bear it. If I can't bear it, I will ask for help from Bugnam of Gojoseon. Good. If there is someone who goes overboard, City Lord, you can do whatever you want. Even if the sky falls, this prince will hold it up for you. Yang Qindong smiled. With Yu Qian's support, the number of Han people in his hands would definitely increase. This would play a very positive role in his future plans. After leaving the City Lord's manor, Yang Qindong set up a few important factories under the protection of Long Wei. The reason why Yangxia could develop so smoothly was because of these factories. Furthermore, because they produced countless products that surpassed this era, it allowed the Five-Star Army to have more money. With a sufficient financial foundation, they could do more things that they wanted to do. Every time he returned to Crimson City, as long as he had time, Yang Qindong would visit these factories to encourage everyone and also to help them solve some problems. He might not understand all the professional things, but after all, he had the experience of the later generations. He was the clearest about which path he should take and which direction he should choose. After Yu Qian and Yang Qindong finished their discussion, he waved his brush and took out 1,000,000 taels of silver from the treasury to invest in the Langshan shelter at the border of Southern Ming and Southern Ming. It must be said that in these past few years, there were many different types of products in Crimson City, and they were all extremely novel. The moment they left the island, they would become popular goods and brought about great profits. It was also because of this that he was quite satisfied with his position as City Lord. At the very least, he did not need to worry about money, and was incomparably bold when doing things. After receiving the silver, Yu Qian felt that he had not done enough. Thus, he got someone to arrange for him to go to the Han people's preparation camp to take a look. He wanted to understand the situation there and solve the practical problems while also encouraging the Han people. Following Yang Qindong's words, these people would be scattered all over the world as seeds in the future. Now that they were fortunate enough to stay in Crimson City, he wanted to give them warmth and let them feel his care and concern. The Han People Preparation Camp referred to the Han people who came from other places temporarily. No matter what their living conditions were like before, they were treated equally here. At the same time, they had to learn all kinds of skills. For example, the men could learn farming, blacksmithing, fishing, or work in factories. The women could learn weaving, embroidery, or work in factories, and so on. In short, the first person had to learn at least 1 or 2 skills to prepare for a better life outside. Other than that, learning culture was also essential. If anyone performed exceptionally well, they might be able to stay in Crimson City forever. In the end, it was up to everyone to decide. In short, this was a preparation camp. People came from all over, and after recharging, they were arranged to go in all directions. Because people came and went frequently, the Han People Preparation Camp was not only under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Civil Affairs. At the same time, the Ministry of Public Security also had people stationed here 24 hours a day to prevent unpleasant things from happening. At the same time, it was also to supervise everyone and act as a deterrent. When Yu Qian arrived at the preparation camp, he saw many public security personnel patrolling nearby. As it was close to evening, many people who went out to work had returned, making the place very lively. Although it was called a preparation camp, it was not a simple tent. Instead, it was a proper 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house built with red bricks and gray tiles. The only difference was that the owner of the place changed frequently. Yu Qian came in plain clothes, which was his usual style. He did not like to be ostentatious wherever he went. Most of the time, he came quietly and left quietly. Some problems were quickly solved. This time was the same. When Yu Qian came, he only brought an assistant and 2 guards arranged by Yang Qindong. They were all from Lungfeng. Arriving early was better than arriving at the right time. When Yu Qian arrived, everyone had finished their work and was having dinner. He took the citizen's identification card from the governor's mansion and arrived at the place without attracting any attention. He saw a family of 5 squatting outside the door and eating dinner. This was a very ordinary family of 5. The parents brought 3 children, 2 boys, and 1 girl. Among them, the eldest son was already over 15 years old. He was in the middle of puberty, which was also the time when the people said that the half-grown boy was eating his father dry. When Yu Qian walked to the door of the courtyard, he saw the 15-year-old boy eating all the rice in his bowl. He then turned to the older woman and said, "Mom, I'm still hungry. I still want to eat." "Okay, I can't finish it. Here, take it." As a mother, she would always dote on her son. The middle-aged woman, with a benevolent expression, placed her leftover bowl of rice in front of her son, causing the young man to chuckle foolishly. This scene represented the harmony and happiness of a family. It was unknown how many people would feel after seeing it, but in Yu Qian's eyes, he frowned slightly. His intuition told him that there was something more to it. He noticed his father shaking his head gently. It was not an expression that a strange woman would have when she loved her son, but there was a kind of love and helplessness in it. He quietly made a hand gesture. The 2 guards, including his assistants, stayed outside. He walked into the courtyard with a smile on his face. Then he took out a box of Dehai cigarettes from his pocket and walked toward the middle-aged man who had just put down his bowl and chopsticks. The sudden arrival of a stranger in the courtyard naturally attracted the attention of the family of 5. When they saw that the newcomer was in his 50s and had an amiable expression on his face, the head of the family immediately stood up and rubbed his hands on his pants with a silly smile on his face. Then he carefully reached out his hand to receive the cigarette. He placed it next to his nose and took a light sniff before saying, "Brother, this is the cigarette that people talk about, right? You know about this?" Yu Qian asked with a smile on his face. "Yes, I know. When I was learning in the factory, I saw someone smoke it. I've only been here for a short time, so I haven't tried it yet." The middle-aged man replied with a sincere smile. "That's right, then try it." Yu Qian still had a smile on his face. He took out a box of Yang family's matches from Crimson City and lit the cigarette for the middle-aged man. Perhaps because it was his first time smoking, the middle-aged man inhaled a little too quickly and choked. Then he revealed an embarrassed smile. With the cigarette as a bridge of communication, the middle-aged man, who was not good with words, told Yu Qian what he wanted to know. The middle-aged man was called Cheng Zhu. He was from Guangdong. When the war between the southern Ming and King Nanming broke out due to the increase in land rent, he, who was already living a hard life, heard about the Liangshan shelter from his neighbors. Thinking of the old saying, "If you move, you live. If you move, you die." Thus, he and his family fled thousands of li from Guangdong to Liangshan. Then they either hurried on foot, sat in a carriage, or took a boat to the Han People Preparation Camp in Crimson City. After talking about the Liangshan shelter, Cheng Ju was filled with emotions. In his words, he had eaten all the food that he had not eaten his entire life. He, who had not been respected his entire life, finally understood the word dignity. He even praised how well he had been taken care of along the way. It was the kind of treatment that he had never experienced before. Even when he was young, his parents had taken care of him like this. When Yu Qian heard this, he nodded in satisfaction from time to time. Occasionally, he would add a few words. When he saw that the other party seemed to have finished speaking, he chuckled and said, "Brother Cheng, it seems like you're very satisfied with your current life." "Satisfied, very satisfied." Cheng Zhu chuckled and nodded, but his wife suddenly nudged him with her elbow. He immediately rolled his eyes, as if warning her about something. This little trick naturally did not escape Yu Qian's eyes. He immediately smiled. "What's wrong? Could it be that Brother Cheng is still hiding something from me?" After he finished speaking, he handed over the pack of Dahai cigarettes in his hand. Cheng Zhu's eyes narrowed into slits as he took the pack of cigarettes from Yu Qian. He felt that Yu Qian seemed to respect him a lot. After thinking about it, he also felt that it would be wrong of him to hide something from Yu Qian. He immediately said, "Actually, everything is fine. The only problem is that the food given is not enough. I'm afraid that old brother saw it just now. My eldest son is a little hungry. He. Chapter 1002. After saying this, Cheng Zhu seemed to feel that he had said too much, so he scratched his head in embarrassment. When Yu Qian heard this, he still had a smile on his face, but he had become a lot more pragmatic. "This shouldn't be. I heard that the matriculation camp's requirement is to provide enough food. How can there be a lack of food?" "Heard?" Cheng Zhu looked confused. "It's not that I heard, but it's the rule. To be honest, Brother Cheng, I'm actually an investigator. I'm here to see if there's anything you're not satisfied with. I'm here to solve your problems. Just like the lack of food, we'll solve it." Yu Qian knew that he had to give him some solid information, so he spoke as if he was an officer. "That's what I said. Brother, your bearing is different from us commoners." Cheng Zhu had an as-expected expression. Since he knew the other party's identity, he did not hide it anymore and told him about the lack of food given by the higher-ups. In the end, he added, "Brother, you saw it just now. My son is growing and has a huge appetite. My wife had no choice but to save some food for them. Then again, being able to eat 7 full meals is already very satisfying. This is something I didn't even dare to think about before." When Cheng Zhu said that he was satisfied, he really did not mean to blame him. In the past, he could not even eat 7 full meals. However, the same words had a completely different meaning in Yu Qian's ears. Yang Qindong had just told him that he wanted the Han people to be rich and to be superior. This was also the reason why he kept conquering new territories and snatching more resources. But now, they could not even fill their stomachs. How could they talk about wealth, dignity, and being superior? Yu Qian left. When he left, Cheng Zhu was still thanking him for the half-pack of cigarettes. Other than the loveliness of the commoners, they did not have high expectations. When someone did them a favor, even if it was just a drop of water, they would still thank them for a long time. After leaving the Han matriculation camp, Yu Qian's expression became completely serious. He looked at his assistant and said, "Send someone to check what's going on with the food problem." Remember, it has to be done in secret. Don't let anyone find out. Yu Qian's worries were not unfounded. Although Chengzhu's eldest son could eat a lot, which led to the lack of food, he did not think that this was a special case. If it was really as Yang Qindong said, and there was enough food, how could such a problem occur? Only 5 days later, the assistant had investigated the matter thoroughly. The city lord's mansion had elite manpower and many information channels. When they had any requests, the Security Bureau and the CIA could mobilize some of them. The city lord's assistant personally came forward and investigated the matter in just 5 days. Then, the report was placed on Yu Qian's desk. When he finished reading it carefully, he immediately slammed the table and cursed. According to the report, the Han preparatory camp did indeed have a problem of illegally withholding food. However, because the amount was not much, only 20% was deducted per person. In addition, the Han people who had just arrived were more honest. Even if some of them did not have enough to eat, they would not tell others. This problem had never been exposed, and no one questioned it. The report also said that the person in charge of this matter was the Vice Minister of Civil Affairs, Yan Xiu, and the Vice Minister of Public Security, Wanan. They had planted a lot of spies in the camp. Once they found out that someone had come to investigate, they would immediately come up with a plan to deal with it. With their men around, it was difficult for the people to even have a chance to speak. This time, if Yu Qian had not used an ordinary person's ID of the preparatory camp, and not the special pass issued by the city lord's mansion, he would have attracted the attention of others as soon as he appeared. Then, they would not have been able to find out anything. How long ago was that? Yu Qian sat on the chair, panting heavily. He looked like he was very angry. "My lord, it has only been 2 months. The assistant was afraid of being implicated, so he carefully replied. Hearing that it had only been 2 months, Yu Qian breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this proved that the Han people who had left the matriculation camp before had not been exploited like this. Otherwise, once those people had left and been assigned to different areas, it would have been difficult to make up for it. However, even if it had only been 2 months, Yu Qian could not tolerate the existence of this matter. Although it involved the 2 vice ministers, he still had no intention of backing down or lifting a finger. Since Yang Qindong trusted him so much and gave him the authority of Resin City, he must take his salary and do a good job. Otherwise, he would feel sorry for himself. How about this? Send this document to Bugnam of Gojoseon in the palace. At the same time, report to Bugnam of Gojoseon that I'm going to deal with the 2 vice ministers. Reporting to Bugnam of Gojoseon, instead of reporting to Yu Qian, for approval meant that Yu Qian had made a decision to deal with the 2 senior cadres properly instead of just reporting the conflict to Bugnam of Gojoseon. Yu Qian was holding back his anger and wanted to properly deal with these 2 vice chiefs. Although these 2 were promoted to their current positions, and he had also raised his hand to agree, this did not prevent him from punishing these people for their crimes. Since there was a problem, he had to deal with it. Only in this way could he clean up the mess. Otherwise, if a cadre made a mistake, he would not be able to intimidate others. He had already decided to denounce the cadre, and was even prepared to remove him from his post and investigate him. However, what Yu Qian did not expect was that just 3 days later, there was a sudden movement in the palace. A large number of Longwei were sent out. They bypassed the Ministry of Supervision, the Ministry of Anti-Corruption, and even arrested Vice Minister Yan Xiu of the Ministry of Civil Affairs and Vice Minister Wanan of the Ministry of Public Security. Not only that, the head of the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Minister Zhou Hua, was also taken away from his office that afternoon. It was said that Minister Zhou was being wronged when he was taken away. When Yu Qian sent people to investigate, they did not find any problems with Zhou Hua. Yu Qian was very satisfied with this person who was recommended by him. However, he did not understand why this person was implicated. Could it be the responsibility of a leader? But if that was the case, why was Minister Long Tainan of the Ministry of Public Security not arrested? Within a day, a minister and 2 vice ministers were taken away from their offices. It was even done by Long Wei. This inevitably caused a lot of discussion among the subordinates. Many of the leaders were anxious and felt that they were in danger. Fortunately, Yang Chendong's actions were always clean and efficient. On the 2nd day of the incident, the Lord of Chisun City, Yu Qian, the Minister of Supervision, Shun Yu, the Minister of Anti-Corruption, Wu Qian, the Minister of Public Security, Long Tainan, and the Vice Minister of Logistics, Yin Qingba, were called to the palace. This was obviously to give an explanation for the arrest of Zhou Hua and the other 2. These high-ranking officials all rushed to the palace nervously. Everyone was extremely nervous. For example, the lord of the city, Yu Qian, was recommended by Minister Zhou Hua. He was guilty of using people inappropriately. Shun Yu and Wu Qian were the 2 leaders in charge of the cadre issue. Naturally, they were guilty of incompetence. Minister Long Tainan was the direct leader of Wanan, but the last one was Yin Qingba. He was only the vice minister of logistics and was only responsible for distributing food. He only had a working relationship with Yan Xiao and the others. Could it be that he also made a mistake? For a moment, everyone looked at Yin Qingba with a strange look. Even he himself was at a loss. He was very sure that he was not involved in this matter. He had no personal relationship with Yan Xiao and the others except for his work relationship. He really couldn't understand why the 6th young master called him here. With his rank, it seemed that it was not enough. No matter what thoughts they had in their hearts, in the end, everyone gathered in a courtyard of the palace. Long Wei's figure was everywhere in the vicinity. It was heavily guarded. In the courtyard, only Yang Chendong was sitting on a chair. Beside him stood the inseparable servant Beta Persei. As soon as everyone came in, they saw that there were only 2 empty chairs beside Yang Chendong. For a moment, everyone was silent. The atmosphere was so tense that they didn't say anything other than calling him the 6th young master. Among everyone, only Yu Qian was still stubbornly calling Yang Chendong Bugnam of Gojoseon. Perhaps this was his insistence. He insisted on using the official title of the Great Ming Dynasty Yang Chendong to show that he still had feelings for the Great Ming Dynasty. Although his heart had long been on Yang Xie's side, he had no intention of changing the title. Yang Chendong also had no intention of correcting this statement. After seeing Yu Qian, he politely stood up and pointed to the chair beside him. "Castellan Yu, please take a seat here." "Thank you, Bugnam of Gojoseon, for giving me a seat." Yu Qian didn't stand on ceremony. He liked to be straightforward. If it was something that belonged to him, he wouldn't refuse. After Yu Qian sat down, Yang Chendong looked at the remaining people. Then his gaze fell on Yin Qingba. "Come, Vice Minister Yin, come and sit down too." He didn't expect Yang Chendong to call out his name. In this environment where he was the lowest in terms of age, seniority, and position, Yin Qingba was a little overwhelmed. He just instinctively shook his head. Beta Persei, who was at the side, had already understood. Seeing that Yin Qingba was still shaking his head, he walked over without saying a word, pulled Yin Qingba over, and pressed him down on the only empty chair. Yin Qingba felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He tried to get up several times, but Beta Persei's arm was so strong that he couldn't move at all. Until Beta Persei saw that he was still struggling, he whispered in his ear, "The 6th young master asked you to sit, so you sit. This is an order." Hearing the word order, Yin Qingba finally calmed down. Speaking of which, a vice minister of logistics in the Castellan mansion also had a lot of power. In particular, logistics had always been the place with the most benefits. Because of this, many people begged him. Yin Qingba had also seen some of the world. If it weren't for the fact that the people who came today were too high-ranking, he wouldn't have become so nervous. Chapter 1003. Yu Qian and Yin Qingba sat down, and the scene quickly became quiet. Yang Qindong, who was sitting in the center position, finally spoke. Today, I called everyone here to give you an explanation regarding Yan Xiu and the other two. At the same time, I also want everyone to give this king an explanation. Finally, they were talking about serious matters. The small courtyard was silent. Under Yang Qindong's signal, Beta Persei behind him took a stack of signed manuscripts and handed them to everyone. You can take a look. This is the testimony of Yan Xiu and Wanan. After interrogation, they confessed to embezzling the food from the Han People preparation camp. After investigation, the food that was embezzled from their hands was eventually transferred to the market. A total of 28,000 taels of silver was ultimately split between the two of them. When the matter reached this point, everyone in the courtyard took a deep breath. 28,000 taels of silver, split equally between the two of them. That meant that each of them would get 14,000 taels of silver. This had already exceeded the maximum limit of 10,000 taels of silver. Needless to say, they would definitely die. Everyone's reaction fell into Yang Qindong's eyes. Even though he knew that these people already knew what he meant, he still said, due to the seriousness of this case, this king has decided to carry out the execution in front of the central square of Crimson City in 3 days. At that time, all the big and small departments in Crimson City must go and watch. If the other officials have nothing important to do, they must also be present. Does anyone have any questions? No. Knowing that Yang Qindong wanted to use this matter to intimidate the other officials, everyone nodded in agreement. All right, if everyone has no questions, then we won't waste time on these two vermin. Next, let's talk about the other people and your problems. After investigation, the Minister of Civil Affairs, Zhou Hua, was aware of this matter. Although he adhered to his principles and did not wallow in the mire with Yan Xiu and the others, he clearly knew about it and did not stand up to stop it for the sake of the so-called harmony between colleagues. This is the crime of inaction. This was the first time that everyone had heard about the crime of inaction. For a moment, everyone was puzzled. Yang Qindong quickly gave them an answer. In this prince's opinion, there are only 3 types of officials. The first type is a problematic official. They either abuse their power for personal gain or take bribes. Such an official is called a bad official. The second type is someone who sets an example for others and works diligently. Such a person can be called a good official. But at the same time, there is also the third type, which is a monk ringing the bell every day and muddling through life. Adhering to the idea that things do not concern them, they will not stop or participate in anything wrong. They only want to live a stable life. These are the officials of inaction. When they have a problem, this prince calls it the crime of inaction. Zhou Hua was such a leader. He had noticed some disgraceful actions of his deputy, Yan Xiu, but he didn't stop it. He didn't point it out, and he didn't report it either. He just let the situation continue to develop. What was the difference between such a person and an accomplice? Receiving such a high salary and enjoying the halo of being respected by others, but not doing what he should be doing, was also a sin. So this prince has personally chosen 50 mu of good farmland outside Qiqian City for him. In the future, he can obediently go and farm. There is no need to consider other people's feelings. If he grows well, he will have more. If he doesn't grow well, he will have less if he is lazy. This prince feels that this is very suitable for him. A crime of inaction had actually turned a high-ranking official back into a commoner. This kind of punishment couldn't be said to be light. For a moment, Yu Qian and the others' faces were flushed with shame. But at the same time, they had a deeper understanding of Yang Qindong's attitude towards officials. That was, since you were in this position, you had to do the work that this position should do. If you wanted to be lazy or even want to do nothing to muddle through, it was clearly impossible. Zhou Hua's matter was thus settled. Following that, Yang Qindong criticized Shen Yu, Wu Qian, and Long Tainan. The first two were in charge of the self-discipline of officials, but they didn't notice the corrupt official in front of them. This was a dereliction of duty and negligence. For this, they were fined 2 months of salary. Long Tainan, as the direct leader of Wan'an, was also guilty of negligence and was fined 3 months of salary. After making these decisions, Yang Qindong looked at the three and asked, "How is it? Do you have any objections to this kind of punishment?" "No," the three said in unison, although they were indeed somewhat wronged. After all, there were so many officials in Yangxia. Especially when there were several provinces that needed to be monitored, it was impossible for them to take care of everything. However, even Zhou Hua had been stripped of his official robes because of his crime of inaction and had become an ordinary farmer. So what if they were fined a few months of their salary? The three didn't have any objections. Yang Qindong looked at Yu Qian and said, "This matter, City Lord Yu has both merits and faults. Because of your merits, this king has arranged a chair for you. After all, without you, this matter wouldn't have been exposed so quickly. But at the same time, the person who recommended Zhou Hua was you. You are obviously guilty of negligence. So this king will punish you with half a year of salary." "You have any objections?" Yu Qian had already stood up. He was always righteous, but at this moment, there was a trace of sweat on his forehead. "This minister has no objections. Bugnam of Gojoseon did the right thing." "Good. The punishment has been given. As a person who has done a meritorious service, you should continue to sit down." Yang Qindong's voice was full of concern as he said, there was no other way. At the beginning, he had set a rule. If there was a problem with the person who recommended the person would be jointly responsible. Seriously speaking, only penalizing Yu Qian with half a year of salary was the lightest punishment. After everyone's questions were asked, Yang Qindong's eyes finally fell on Yin Qingba. He said, "Vice Minister Yin, this subordinate is here." Yin Qingba hurriedly got up. His face was full of anxiety. After listening for a long time, he still couldn't figure out why he was here. If he was guilty, he should be standing. But if he was meritorious, where was his meritorious service? Seat. You are a person who has done a meritorious service. So this king bestowed you a seat. Everyone else is the same. I hope that the next time you see this king, you can all sit down and talk." Yang Qindong gestured for Yin Qingba to sit down again. He didn't forget to use this matter to remind Shen Yu and the others. These words caused the three people to nod in unison. Feeling that he had already reminded them, Yang Qindong returned to the main topic. He looked at Yin Qingba and said, "The reason why I said that you have done a meritorious service is because a while ago someone privately came to you to sell food to you, but you bluntly refused. After that, you wanted to find this person, but you didn't have any clues. Is that right?" "Ah, how did the sixth young master know about this?" Yin Qingba was stunned by these words. There was indeed such a thing. After all, he was a vice minister in charge of logistics in the City Lord Manor. He was in charge of the issue of food distribution. Because of this, someone wanted to sell food directly to him, but he refused at the time. After that, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He thought that this matter must involve something, so he wanted to find the person who came to him to find out the truth. But with his power, it was difficult to find that person. He also suffered from no evidence to prove the existence of this matter. He also had no way to report to the Ministry of Supervision and the Ministry of Anti-Corruption. In the end, he could only not find out. But he really couldn't understand how Yang Qindong knew about this matter. Facing the confused Yin Qingba, Yang Qindong quickly gave him an answer. You don't have to think too much about it. The person who came to you was sent by a vice minister of the Ministry of Public Security. He didn't want to expose himself, so there weren't many people who could find out about him. This explanation made Yin Qingba immediately understand what happened that day. He immediately said with an ashamed expression, "Sixth young master, this subordinate is also responsible for this matter. If it wasn't for the lack of evidence and the fact that I couldn't report to the relevant departments, I would have done so long ago. Perhaps the matter at the Han People Preparation Camp wouldn't have been delayed until now. No, this isn't your fault. You used your actions to prevent worse things from happening. I'm afraid you don't know. Originally, Yan Xiao and Wanan were prepared to keep more food, but because they couldn't find a suitable place to sell it, they could only sell it in small quantities in the city. That's why they only kept 20%. From this, it can be seen that you are already a person of merit. This king also sent people to investigate. When you were the vice minister of logistics in the city Lord Manor, you did everything by yourself and were a righteous person. Yes, as a reward, you can be the minister of the Ministry of Civil Affairs. Directly promoting a vice minister of logistics in the city Lord Manor to a minister was not as simple as being promoted by 3 ranks. This decision also stunned everyone. This was because everyone knew that there were 3 vice ministers in the Ministry of Civil Affairs who were quite capable. They were also righteous in their work. Logically speaking, they should have been strong candidates for the minister position. Now, that a vice minister of logistics in the city Lord Manor was suddenly demoted to the position of minister, wasn't this a blow to their morale? As if he saw through everyone's thoughts, Yang Qindong said, "A single matter in the Ministry of Civil Affairs caused problems to the minister and vice minister. As their colleagues, the other vice ministers are also responsible for their negligence. Not promoting them is a punishment for them. If anyone has any objections, they can come directly to this king. This king is willing to have a good talk with them." When he said this, he expressed his dissatisfaction, but at the same time, he also had the intention of conjugation. Conjugation was most famous in the Qin dynasty. It was first introduced by the famous reformer Shanyang. It meant that several households were conjugated. If one person had a problem, everyone would be guilty. This kind of policy had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that when something happened, everyone could think of the role of supervising each other. The disadvantage was that it often involved the innocent, and in the end, it forced the elderly to become the bad guys. Yang Qindong was well aware of the advantages and disadvantages of this, so when he talked about conjugation, he didn't use it so seriously. He didn't punish or promote so that it wouldn't make people panic. Chapter 1004. After these words and decisions were made, everyone praised Yang Qindong's political wisdom in their hearts. At the same time, they also became more cautious. In the future, they needed to be more serious. Not only did they have to be righteous, they also had to influence the people around them to be righteous as well. Yin Qingba, who was called out, felt as if he had been hit in the head by a big pie. At this moment, he was so excited that he didn't know what to say. As usual, he could only tactfully decline and say, "Sixth young master, thank you for your high regard. However, I feel that there are still many things that I need to learn. I'm afraid that I can't do a good job in such an important position as the Minister of Civil Affairs. Yang Chendong smiled in satisfaction at Yin Qingbao's modesty. However, once the appointment was made, it would not be easily changed. Modesty is good, but excessive modesty is not good. The position of minister will be given to you. As long as you have the people in your heart and work seriously and responsibly like the Vice Minister of Logistics in the City Lord's mansion, there is nothing that you can't do well. Then this subordinate will listen to the sixth young master. Seeing that he had said what he needed to say, Yin Qingbao's excited heart slowly calmed down, and he accepted the task. Ha! All of this is thanks to City Lord you. It was you who recommended another talent to us. Yang Chendong smiled and patted Yu Qian's arm. Then he looked at everyone and said, "This king will not be stingy with what I can give to everyone. However, you should not take the things that you should not take. If anyone takes it, then be prepared to be severely punished. Only when the officials are upright can good policies fall on the heads of the people. As long as the people are satisfied, then we will be able to stand firm and go further. Any official who doesn't take the common people seriously, the common people won't take him seriously, and this prince won't take him seriously either. These words are for all of you here, and I'll have to trouble you to pass it on to your other colleagues." "Yes, we will remember." Yu Qian also stood up and solemnly promised Yang Chendong. "Then I hope that the next time I see you all, you can sit here instead of standing." Yang Chendong expressed his hope with a simple sentence. In order to have a seat when they meet the sixth young master, the other officials naturally tried their best to perform well. After the incident with Yen Xiu and the 10,000 times came out, everyone once again saw the sixth young master's determination to run a clean government. To be honest, it was a little harsh for the two powerful vice chiefs to be publicly beheaded just because they had embezzled more than 10,000 taels of silver. Even if they went to earn a salary and other benefits, they would be able to earn it in a few years or more. The treatment that Yang Xie gave to the officials was quite good. This was especially true after the implementation of the ticketing system. Those ticketing tools that were issued on time every month could be exchanged for high prices without having to take them out. It was precisely because the treatment was too good that if they made mistakes again, the risk and capital would be too high. As a result, the number of officials who became Yang Xie officials in the future was much lower than any other power. Zhou Hua was removed from his official position because of the crime of not doing anything. The response was even more enthusiastic. It turned out that not being greedy and not doing things was not good in Yang Xie. Yang Chendong personally said that if an official did not do things for the people, it would be better to go home and sell sweet potatoes. As an official, one had to do things one day at a time. If one did not want to offend people and did not do things, then one might as well not do anything and just go home and be a farmer. Yin Qingbao went from being the vice chief of logistics in the city lord's mansion to being the chief of a department. He also told everyone that as long as one worked hard, gold would always shine. This made many of the officials who were originally very capable, but were worried that they would not be able to make it big in the future, feel relieved. Originally, they were worried that no one would see them lowering their heads to do things. However, with Yin Qingbao's example, they did not have to worry so much. They also did not have to put an effort to make their superiors happy and speak up for themselves. Without people giving gifts, there were naturally no people receiving gifts. In an instant, the environment in the bureaucracy became much better. This made the people from the Ministry of Supervision and the Ministry of Anti-Corruption a lot less to do. They had no choice but to shift their attention from Qiqian City to the actual provinces under Yang Xie's control. The Deputy General of Laos, Haiqing, suddenly felt that there were a lot of strangers around him. He didn't know if he was being paranoid. so he found an opportunity and asked his confidant to invite Dou Lilong to his house. Hai Qing, Lao Province's deputy general, was the deputy of General He Guang. He was an important figure in the military. When Kanglan Kingdom was destroyed, he was very proactive and quickly changed the rudder according to the wind. He became someone He Guang trusted and recommended to Lao Province's governor, Luan Shaoqin. Step by step, he rose to the position of deputy general. To be able to become a deputy general, he was considered the second most important person in the entire Lao Province's military. Logically speaking, he should be satisfied. However, a man's greed was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Soon, the greedy Hai Qing was dragged down by someone. The person who started this was Dou Lilong. Dou Lilong on the surface was a businessman from Siam. However, he had another secret identity, one of the heads of Siam's intelligence agencies. He was in charge of investigating the matters of the neighboring countries. When possible, he would pull in important people from the opposing factions to his side. From the moment Dou Lilong set his eyes on Hai Qing, the outcome was already decided. Just a total of 20,000 taels of silver was enough for the two of them to call each other brothers. The moment Dou Lilong revealed his identity, Hai Qing could no longer turn back. Yang Xie had a rule that anyone who embezzled more than 10,000 taels of silver would be beheaded. For someone like him, who had embezzled 20,000 taels of silver, even if he turned himself in, he would at most be spared. It was impossible for him to continue being an official. Since that was the case, other than being used by Dou Lilong, he had no other choice. After receiving the news, Dou Lilong came to the high mansion as a friend and a businessman. He met Hai Qing, who was frightened by the mere twang of a bow. When they met, Hai Qing looked at Dou Lilong in panic and said, "Sir Dou, you must save me." Dou Lilong pretended to be shocked and asked, "What's wrong, General Hai? Did something happen?" "Oh, Sir Dou, you don't know. I might have been targeted. Recently, when I go out, I always find a lot of strangers around." Hai Qing explained the changes around him. He realized that he had embezzled too much and could not turn back. He continued, "Sir Dou, only you can save my life now. Seeing that I have helped your caravan a lot in the past, please help me. Otherwise, you can allow me to be an official in Siam." Although he was cursing Hai Qing in his heart, Dou Lilong still smiled and said, "Mr. Hai must be thinking too much. When I arrived at your residence, I didn't find anything wrong. Could it be that I'm thinking too much?" No, I'm still a deputy general. I can still observe the situation around me," Hai Qing explained. Just as they were talking, a soldier suddenly reported from outside, saying that General He Guang's personal guard captain, Yan Jiang, had arrived, along with 6 other soldiers. What should we do?" Hai Qing became even more flustered after hearing the news. He stood up and paced around in circles. Dou Lilong's eyebrows twitched, but he quickly regained his composure. He smiled and said, "It's okay. Many people know that we are friends. Are you saying that I am not allowed to talk to my friends when I am an official?" Hai Qing did not relax at all because of this reason. Instead, he continued, "Lord Dou, you may not know this, but this Yan Jiang relies on He Guang's trust and is usually very domineering. You can't get past him just because he's a friend. Although he won't touch me, I'm afraid that he will take you away. If that happens under torture, can you guarantee that you won't say anything?" This, Dou Lilong, who was always calm, finally changed his expression. He did not dare to guarantee anything. With his glib tongue, he boasted that he was not afraid of anything. However, if he was really tortured, who knew how long he could last? He might not even be able to last for a while. Thinking that he absolutely could not be caught, Dou Lilong had no choice but to be ruthless. he made a beheading gesture with his right hand and said, "Let's see the situation later. If the other party insists on forcing us, then we will strike first. Kill Yanjiang? That will definitely infuriate General He Guang." Hai Qing's entire body shuddered, and his face turned pale. "What? Do you think that if you don't kill now, others won't kill you? Let me tell you, you can only move forward now. Think about it. Once you accomplish something big, our king will be happy. He will definitely give you a high post and generous salary. It is even possible that he will help you people of Kanglin restore your country. It is better than being scolded as a traitor." Dou Lilong was going all out. He did not expect the situation to be so serious. If he knew, he would not have appeared so easily. In the courtyard of the high residence, Yanjiang, who was dressed in armor, led 6 soldiers and paced back and forth in the courtyard. After not seeing Hai Qing for a long time, he had lost count of how many times he had lost his temper. Finally, a manager came. He said that the High General was meeting with guests in the backyard, and it was not convenient for him to come over. He asked Captain Yen to go over himself. "Let's go. We have to take Dou Lilong away today, no matter what." Yanjiang said loudly. Then he led his 6 subordinates to the backyard. Not long after they walked to the backyard, the door to the front yard was completely closed from the inside. In the living room of the backyard, Hai Qing and Dou Lilong were sitting at a table with food and drinks. Yanjiang's sudden appearance instantly broke the harmonious atmosphere. "Deputy General Hai, I suspect that this Siamese merchant, Dou Lilong, is a spy from the enemy country. I want to take him away, now. I hope that you can make it easy for us." You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.